Yo, Robbie, did you get any of that? I don't
I
know.
got some of it.
I didn't really troll him, but
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I mean, it's your thing, so and it's you're not that type of person necessarily, anyways. Um, but like that's what I was kind of looking for. It's just like a thing of trolling.
yeah,
Um,
100.
because even if you try to have an honest conversation with you, he's just gonna kick you. Like you try to have an actual honest conversation, a little different than obviously the other ones he has, but very genuine. But clearly, as you saw, he just kicked you. So
I know. I feel like I got him on the like humility part. The guy has no humility. And he's so unable to steel man his opposition. It's weird that he agrees with me and then he like goes into assuming. He reiterated several times like that he assumes bad faith. He assumes that conversation on TikTok are bad faith. If they're atheists, they're bad faith. It's like, bro, that's the problem. You're starting with the assumption that every conversation is bad faith. You know, how does your method sound if that's the case? You know,
because he just has one agenda, right? They're just denying his worldview, which he affirms is like a truth maker type of a thing. So,
totally.
right. So I don't know. I mean, I watched him. He's nauseating to listen to for. I watched for like 2 hours. It was 2.5 today. I'm not gonna lie, it's pretty rough.
Yeah.
He was kicking out so many people. I was actually shocked it took that long to get to you. That he was talking to that one guy for so long. Because usually he'll talk to a person for about a minute, maybe two, and then they just get kicked.
Yeah, especially when they agree. Like that guy that was right before me was theist or whatever.
Right.
They
Yeah,
were,
that one too. Right.
yeah. But then he kicked me for that same reason. He's like, "Oh, we don't disagree. We definitely do disagree heavily. Like the method he has is so disingenuous, and yeah, it is like it makes you nauseous. It makes me nauseous too.
Yeah, he's just not like open, receptive to actually having a dialogue, right? So he just leads people into like these one-dimensional. Yeah, he's just not like open, receptive to actually having a dialogue, right? So he just leads people into like these one-dimensional. I don't know if you ever looked it up at line. Have you ever looked up like what's the probability of you, the exact version of you? Have you ever looked that up?
Oh God, I don't even know how to quantify that either. Too
Well,
right? Yeah,
well,
like the probability must be something crazy.
right, it's astronomical, right? So
Right.
they have there's like some school that did it or whatever. So, anyways, they broke it down by like how many semen or the male does in a lifetime, how many times they did. Anyways, long story short, even if you're holding to like the world, I think he's a young creationist, right? Even if you're holding to the world being like 6 to 7,000 years, it's going to be at least 150 generations. Right. So that's already going to be, because if it's 150 generations, that's already going to be a 10 to the power of 150. So the thing that he's saying that's an improbable, right, like with the 150 zeros, it's already about the same amount of the improbability of what he's talking about. When you factor in other factors of the world, I think it goes as high as like 2 million. The probability of the exact version of you is like in like 10 to the power of like 2 million something. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And so what's the probability of like the exact version of me and the exact version of you and the exact version of Kris having a conversation on a planet that's going to be, July the 18th or something like that, right? At like, 11:58 a.m. Well, I mean, PM, right? It's going to be even more astronomical for all those things to entail. But like, clearly here we are, right? So he's just looking at things like after the fact, and trying to hold to like some sort of probabilistic argument for it when it doesn't make sense.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. His whole point about probability, I couldn't even really parse out if he was defending probability or not. I know that he was just trying to point out the contradiction in guests using probability to defend one side of his argument and then like questioning probability the next. But I don't know. I couldn't tell if Darth was like, was he trying to make a probabilistic argument or not? And for exactly the
He's
things
saying
you're saying is like, I don't really, yeah.
no, he's not saying it's that. He's saying that's why he brought up like to the power of 50. Once it becomes past like it's almost impossible. But again, it's not impossible, right? It's more improbable. So
Yeah.
he's trying to
Yeah.
make this claim of God is a simpler notion because the probability without God is just so astronomical that it's almost at zero. But
Totally.
again, how would we rate like the God claim for a probabilistic? You
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to because you don't have like any factuals for it to show the math on it. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, for me, it's blaringly obvious who has good methods and who doesn't. It's not about necessarily the content of what they're saying. It's way more about their style, their strategy, right? And like, I think the common thread that a lot of atheists are allergic to with theists is this certainty that they have, this dogmatic approach to conversation. It's so toxic to assert yourself again and again. And theists and religious minds aren't the only types who do it. I think as humans, we're all somewhat fallible in this sense. Like our humility is limited. It's hard to admit when you're wrong and things like that. But people who have a good method to conversation seem to be able to like embrace being wrong or embrace the lighthearted nature of conversation more than someone who's just so like certain of themselves and again nauseating with their inability to sort of drop the facade and take things a little less hard, like lightheartedly, those kinds of things. Everything's so serious, everything's so combative. People who have good methods seem to be a lot more relaxed and a lot more able to comprehend their opposition. I think it's a green flag when you can comprehend your opposition. You don't have. It's funny that he pointed out the whole like everyone's on this app to get W's. It's like, well, you're asserting that method more than anyone else because as soon as there's a confrontation, you kick someone. You're not the combative nature of your approach is really the issue. So
I think you're totally right on that. I think look, I think we've all kind of made up our minds on certain things. And I think it's difficult to try to be open to different points of view, right? Because in a sense, you have to admit to yourself that you might have had some sort of viewpoint for a really long time that's completely wrong or something like that. And I think it's noble for people to change their mind into different belief structures. But like that starts off with having like being open to having a honest dialogue, right? To receiving in information versus like you just have a wall where nothing ever goes through, no matter what it is. And clearly he's not going to be that guy. He's used to running a script. And then that's what he wants. He just wants to run a script and go from there.
Totally. Yeah. I think it takes like, it's a skill set, Robbie, honestly, to approach conversation like open-mindedly. Like you're saying, not on all topics. Like some people might be more flexible on certain topics, but to really get into the topic that triggers you or that you have fundamental beliefs on, and then have a good faith conversation, like that's a skill set, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's the type of skill set that I think is like the difference between a person who can curate relationships in their life and someone who can't, which is like that's so heartbreaking for me. It's like hard to even get out, but I feel like a lot of people isolate themselves unknowingly. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, but it's like a human condition in a sense, right?
Yeah absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to drop because it's late and just Darth actually wore me out, to tell you the truth.
Oh yeah, no pressure, man. But yeah, thanks for reviewing all that. Thanks for coming up to your gangster.
Yeah, man. Have a good day, guys. See you, Kris.
You too.
Bye, Robbie. Hey, Logic. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing, Kris?
Good. I watched that engagement with Darth.
Did you?
He's very disingenuous. Like he doesn't even. I don't think he can comprehend words properly or something. There's something not firing right in his head, to be honest with you.
He's got so many good ideas, and then they're snuffed out immediately by his approach. Like I feel like a lot of what he says actually does have some important. He has some important points, but then they're just immediately his approach just snuffs out anything he has to say.
Yeah, everyone quits listening to him.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them because he's just so rude and he doesn't want to hear anyone else because he's dead set on he's right and everyone else is wrong. That it really is an off-putting thing for people. So
it's crazy too because this app is like the epitome of that, but for him to be the idea, he's like the idol of the app that is full of people who do this, but he's like one of the worst versions of it. It sucks. It sucks also that it's like from a theist perspective, because this is why I started the conversation with him, like saying like I'm a theist, but I don't agree with you, because it's like it kind of breaks my heart. Like I want to be able to conversate with people that apparently we see things eye to eye or whatever. But then the minute I try to engage, it's not very friendly. It's like, wow, this is how I'm met with by other Christians. It's kind of like, yeah.
Yeah, it just leaves a bad taste in everyone's mouth, and it's really just off-putting for me. I don't know. I have trouble swallowing people like that because it's like, ugh, you might have some good points that are being made, but they all get lost by your attitude.
Yeah, yeah.
So, how have you been?
I've been okay. I struggled recently with this little job opportunity I got going on. Basically, I'm trying to get into indoor skate park, running kids camps, but they have a bit of like, I don't know, they're short-sighted in their approach. Like they don't really have enough programs to offer, and they don't have a full-time position. So I'm trying to negotiate with them and get them to open up. Like, this could be a growing business if you let me in there more long-term, but I don't think it's going to happen. So that's what I'm dealing with lately.
Oh yeah, that's no fun, especially when you have something to offer and somebody has something that, your skill set will absolutely help. It gets aggravating when people refuse to, open up like that. It's almost like they're scared to succeed.
That's it. That's definitely it. I know I'm kind of overwhelming and intimidating too. Like this is my career and passion. A lot of the other people that are involved, this is kind of like their part-time hobby. So when I come in there, it's like I'm a bit of like, trying to take things over before I earn my position, which I'm humble enough to, admit that I'm not trying to run things in there, but I just know it could help a lot. And they're not going to have it though. It's all good at the end of the day. But being like I'm so bad at being an employee. I've always been like entrepreneurially minded, and that's like blessing and a curse,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I always love how humble you are, though. You're always very humble.
Thank you, Kris. Thank you. Not always, but I try. I try to be. I do try to be.
Yeah, you do have this humility about you. No, I'm not. I'm not. I can be an arrogant little shit sometimes and very overly pedantic when I want to be.
Yeah, so, but I've said this. You just match energy. That's what you do.
I do, but it's because I got sick of watching good people be run over by people and the good people being too meek to stand up for themselves. So I'm like, the hell with that. Like, you want to be an ass? I'll show you what an ass is.
Yeah, totally.
Which is not always the best way to handle it, but it is what it is. So, truth is not in math. What does that mean? You want to explain that?
Oh God, yeah. I kind of forgot that I even had this up here. Yeah, I struggle with this one because I've been called out on it a lot. But yeah, I guess just like the word truth is an English word, and math doesn't seem to contain English words. Now, I understand that math's like bivalent, so we could assign a truth value to an equation. But yeah, as far as I see, I think that people kind of misinterpret this word truth when they assign it to math, or like, I don't know really what that means. I don't know what people mean when they say like math is true, I guess, what exactly they mean by that.
I can understand that perspective. I think that people assign the word truth to a lot of things without truly understanding what truth is or what it can mean. I think that they just like the way that it sounds.
Right. And then like, okay, this is what gets me is that like as a kid, I hated math. Math class is the worst. Everyone hates math class. But then we think that's the truest class. I've said this before. Yeah. So I feel like my it's pointing out my bias. It's like when I use this word truth, I use it in terms of like, oh, math is one of the truest systems of truth, I guess. It's a system of truth. And then that gets me to like rock bottom. It's like, well, so, but yeah, like what does that mean? Or like where am I going? I guess that in the end, that doesn't really mean much. Yeah.
Words in general don't mean much unless we assign meaning to them.
Right. So. Right. Yeah, that's kind of where my faith comes from, I guess. That's why I try to not label myself as an agnostic or atheist, because I believe in these systems. If I say things like math is true, like if I do believe that seems like that seems biased. That seems like a faith-based argument, but I hold to it, I guess.
Yeah.
Like for instance, this is like another thing I heard is that like the laws of logic don't need to exist for them to be true,
Hmm.
and that's
The laws
true.
of logic.
Yeah, to an atheist, that's
Hmm.
true. Like an atheist doesn't necessarily need to
Hmm.
believe that the laws of logic like exist for them to be true. We can verify the truth value in a computer program, but the world doesn't exist in the computer.
That's true. Yeah, I
Yeah,
can
so
see that.
that's kind of where I get bogged down as an atheist. That seems like nihilism, or that seems like it seems like lacking faith. It seems like you don't, like you said, we're not then you're not assigning meaning to the truth, which seems
Hmm.
like psychologically bad.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that perspective as well. I was actually talking to someone the other day about the conversation we'd had about sentience and consciousness, and then it was a very interesting. The person that I was talking to really appreciated the perspective that we had come to on that, and I think that that was logic in action. And a lot of people don't think that logic has any applicable anything. I was talking to
Right,
someone the other day that said logic is a fallacy.
right, right,
And I was like, what the fuck does that even mean? Can you explain that to me?
right.
Um,
Or like logic is dogmatic, like that kind of
oh
thing. It's
God.
yeah, like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, that just leaves me with my mouth hanging open and I'm like, how have you survived X amount of years on this planet? Oh, and then I try
Well,
to be nice.
Well, that's what I mean. I think I do. I don't think many people have the method. I think a lot of people think truth and logic go hand in hand, and then that basically corrodes their thinking because certainty and their ego get a hold of them, and their humility gets further and further the more they quote unquote use logic. They become irate. They become unreasonable. They become irritable. They're stacking assumptions and making sense and making claims that get them somewhere in their own head, but on the outside they're breaking down. They're emotionally distraught, or at least unempathetic to their opposition. And like I don't see how that is logic. I don't see how a person. I see logic as more of a demeanor than a technical system of truth.
I could agree with that.
Right.
I think that I think we had talked about the difference between truth and fact at one point, and I find that to be a very
Yes.
interesting conversation with some of these people. The difference between a truth and a fact, especially when you're talking about things, that some people, oh, it's a truth. Well, whose truth is it? You know, and then they're like, what do you mean? A truth is just a fact, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's different. And that ends up being a very interesting conversation that leads people sometimes down this existential crisis spiral that's entertaining to watch in some people. But then I kind of feel bad watching it in others. I don't know how to explain it really. It's really funny.
Yeah, okay, like on that topic, I heard J Mike say one time, a fact is a true proposition. But then your question is, well, what is truth though? And so that is the very issue. It's like we can label what a fact is, but this subject object issue is obviously
Hmm.
pertinent. Like you cannot escape someone's, like you're saying, experience or personal
Yeah.
truth, right? And we're all gonna have a different interpretation of like what the truth is. And so yeah,
Yeah,
without this,
that's actually how
yeah.
J Mike and I became friends. Was we got in a conversation about truth and fact at one point, and it ended up being a very interesting conversation. And J Mike was like, "I can see your perspective," and I was like, "I would lie and tell you I could see yours."
Yeah,
And-
he's very into modal logic, and like I think that the truth gets very saturated in that kind of sophistry. I want to say it's like pretty articulate. It gets pretty bogged down in symbolic logic.
It really does. And people get extremely aggravated. Don't ever tell them that. Like, you want to see someone really lose it on you. Like, tell them that. But if you don't ever say that to them because some of these people can't handle those words.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, I see Russell keeps popping in. Russell, why don't you pop up here?
yeah. Come up here, Russell. There you go. I invited him.
I like Russell. We don't always agree on everything, but I really like Russell. I like different opinions that, stretch my mind and make me think at a different perspective.
Me too. I'm also so bad at hosting lives. I'm so impatient. And I don't invite enough people and everything. Like, you guys seem to fill your panels so fast. Like, I've never even had a full panel.
I do not fill my panels quickly. Trust me. A lot of people, it takes me a while. And it just depends on the luck of the draw and who comes in, because a lot of people can't stand me. If you didn't know that.
It's the energy match. They don't see the pattern. They don't. If you hopped in on a room with you where you're matching energy with someone who's annoying, you are annoying, Kris. But I know what's going on, so I can see the pattern. But you just match energy so fast. You're like, if this person's annoying, I'm gonna be more annoying. I'm gonna be more annoying than them. Like, but I find it funny.
Exactly. See, and like Bearcub, Bearcub did not like me when he first met me, and then the more he got to watch me, the more he understood where I was coming from, and he was like, I find it kind of funny that you match energy with these people that never get energy matched to them. So
Yeah.
It's entertaining to me at this point, because people get so bogged down in their bullshit that they forget that they need to be humbled occasionally. And I think that's why I exist, to humble some of these people sometimes.
Oh man, I guess me too. You do a better job of that than I do, but I'm allergic to that.
You do.
I'm allergic to that.
You're allergic to stupidity. I've watched you enough to know that you cannot stand the stupidity that comes with some of these arrogant people. And I truly appreciate that.
The juxtaposition of intelligence and arrogance, it makes stupidity, and that frustrates me. To hear breaks my heart to hear someone so smart, so capable, so intelligent, unable to harness their own emotions. It's like, I just wish I could teach him a lesson, because I've been there. I've been that kid. I know what it's like, right? I know what it's like to think your education and what you know, your knowledge is so important. It defines you, right? Your truth, your worldview, those things define you. Yeah, and letting go of that, it actually defines. Letting go. It's funny how much letting go of that actually defines you, because everyone who's on the other side of it can see you're just operating through facade. You're regurgitating arguments that have been performed before. Who are you? Let's see who the real you is, and everyone can sense that facade the moment you're not speaking from the heart, or being like a genuine person, being authentic, being willing to see the other side. Humans point that out so fast. We can all see it so fast.
Yeah, and all of us are flawed in some area, in some way, shape, or form. We're perfectly imperfect. And that's what people don't understand. Like, I'm constantly evolving my stances on things, and constantly, having my ideas changed and my, position changed by very intelligent people who I greatly appreciate for challenging me in the way that I think.
Me too. And sometimes it takes a couple days. Sometimes at first I'm defensive as well, right? Like, it's hard to, and it takes a couple days, and you're like, oh, okay, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I have a little more research there. Sometimes it's not immediate.
Oh yeah, after I've died on the hill.
Right.
Normally after I've died on that hill.
Right. Isn't that funny? It almost does take that. Yeah. Isn't that funny? But yeah.
And then read.
Oh, you're breaking up, Kris. I can't hear you. You got red bars.
Of course I do. Look, there comes Bearcub. Hey, Bearcub.
Yeah, Bearcub, what up? Bearcub literally just sent me my book. I'm like unbelievably stoked. I don't even know how to talk about it. Been thinking about it every day, what I want to write in it. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I know. Hey, he's such an amazing artist with that type of stuff. Bear, you should come up. We're just talking about how our viewpoints change and evolve, and how we die on certain hills, and then have the ego death later when we realize that maybe our perspectives are wrong.
Yeah, if only we could eliminate the hill dying. If only we could come to these conclusions with grace, eh?
Right.
Hi, everybody.
Yeah.
Hey. I'm so glad to see you, Bear.
I feel like the texture and color of that leather on the book is like what a logic troll's skin would look like, Bearcub. It's like perfect.
Yeah, that design was specifically designed to be logically illogical. I was going to tell you about that. And it's good to see you. If I could speak, it's good to see you too, Kris. But yeah, it started with the idea that I was going to make the headbands anomalous in just like the rhythm, because I've been really nitpicky about making them balanced the whole time. I have to have them equidistant, and I like to have the numbers even, and all these different things. And I was like, I'm going to make them completely random. And then at one point, I decided I was going to throw a little blip of red into it at that one spot. And I was like, that makes sense.
That is the
So it
sickest
was like,
detail. That's so sick.
it was like all along the way, all these little things that just kept happening for perfectly logically illogical reasons. I was like, yeah, this is your bug.
Yeah, just embracing the chaos a bit. Yeah, that's sick. That's so sick.
I love that about Bear and how Bear really puts into his book the individual as he sees them. My book, I love my book, and he does so much amazing work.
Dude, it's so esoteric to make books for other people. That is the most esoteric thing. It's one thing to be an author and write books, right? But to make blank books for other, like, bro, that's like some meta. That's so esoteric, Bear Cub. Like, I'm literally not mature enough to be on that level. Like, I've been thinking about that a lot too. Like, that is so unbelievably like wise and esoteric. I can't even. I'm not there yet, honestly, man.
Well, I don't know if I'm anywhere different, but I can tell you that it's a gift to me, and that's one of the reasons that I started doing it. But I started out with the idea that one day I would build a book and fill it with all of the wisdom of the world, that I would find the answers to everything and compact it into this perfectly decorated little book of gems and truth. And the older I got, the more I realized I didn't know anything. And then one day, actually with Kris in the live and based room, I realized that probably the best service of these is to give them away, because it became apparent to me that letting other people fill it with their journeys, regardless of how profound or deep or wonderful it was more than I could ever write, because it was their experience, it was their truth, it was their, as you guys said when I walked in, revelations of aha moments, and letting go of those aha moments and going back and looking at those over again, and to be allowed to create that for somebody is a huge gift to me.
Did I ever tell you what I started putting in my book, Bear?
I thought you told me you were putting quotes that you'd gathered that you loved, but I can't remember now. It's been a while.
I started putting the quotes that I've gathered from people off of TikTok in it, as well as the answers to some of the deeper questions that I ask people.
That's awesome.
So I started filling it with
Really
other people's
glad you love
stories. Yeah, and
So
I
cool.
save. I'm gonna save like the last 10 pages, and those are gonna be my pages. But I've started filling it with other people's quotes and stories and stuff like that, stuff that's touched me and inspired me and stuff, because of the way that you give them away and the way that you inspire people to do things.
I'm really, really glad that you like it. I'm glad that you found use for it too. A lot of people say they're afraid to write in it, and I'm like, no, don't be afraid. Draw a doodle in it. Draw a shopping list, whatever.
Yeah, it's
Anything.
literally the exercise of letting go. It is such a beautiful book that it does feel intimidating, but that's the very exercise that you're like putting those okay, you're putting those thought experiments on a pedestal. You're saying, listen, your quote unquote useless scribbles, your notes, right? They're actually worth something. Put them in the expensive book. Put them That's where they belong. Don't belittle your notes. Don't belittle your journal, your own thoughts. Don't think they don't deserve to be on a pristine page just because they're not written perfectly or whatever. They're not edited. They're not grammatically correct. Loosen up. Loosen up with your own thinking. Loosen up. Forgive yourself and put it on the page, right? Have fun with it a bit. It's a hard lesson to learn, man.
Well, absolutely. And the fun part is like it. They're not pristine pages. They're dirty. They're jagged. They've got lots of flaws. The more I looked at the book that I was so proud of that I made for you, I kept seeing things that I'd flawed and messed up, and I'm like, man, this, that, and the other thing. But the thing that I loved about that hobby in particular is that it taught me to embrace those flaws, not just to get past them, but because that's what made my style my style. People like my books because of my flaws.
Yes.
And so it's like,
you see them as flaws. I will not. Trust me. I don't even know what a flaw looks like. I've never even made a book like that. Every detail, every little nook and cranny for me looks like intentional art. Looks like a gift, you know. So it's you're spot on, bro.
I don't know. It's a multifaceted event when I go through the thinking about making the books, giving them away, what people could put in them, how they could change that and come back and do it again. They could burn it to ashes and use the ashes to turn it into ink to write something else with. I mean, there's this endless ocean of possible that comes from it, and it just fills me with so much joy to do it. So whenever somebody lets me make one for them, it's a really big gift, and I mean that when I say thank you to both of you for letting me make you one.
No, my God, I can't even take it,
thank
bro.
you. Bear's so wonderful, isn't he? Look, this car gets on my nerves. The front of it looks like a fucking asshole. Look at this car. Doesn't that look like an asshole to you? Like, just like a jerk? It looks like a jerk.
I'm looking for something else, and I'm like, I don't see that, Kris.
Yeah, I'm looking for an orifice.
You're looking for a literal asshole. Every time I walk up to this car, I'm like, this car looks like a jerk. And I'm like, I don't know why I have this car. It looks like a jerk. As crazy as that sounds, that's my weird thing of the day.
That's okay. Mine looks like it came with a vape stick, so. Vape
I used to have one of your cars. Stop it.
I love my car. I just realized that I mostly fit the stereotype, except I don't vape.
Don't start vaping. Just, just fit the stereotype of the car. You do fit the stereotype. Oh my God, Bear.
I do. Every time I see somebody driving down the street and when I look at them, I'm like, oh God, yeah, that's me right there.
Whoops.
Middle-aged, baseball cap, camo, cargo pants. Yep.
Do you journal too, Bearcub? Like, do you keep a journal for yourself as well?
I have a daily gratitude journal. That's my first book that I ever made. And at first it was going to be the list of all of the books that I made, and I called it the multiverse because I refer to them as blank universes. But after I stopped selling them, I decided I would make that my gratitude journal. So I've been doing that every day. And I'm going to need another one soon. I should journal more, but I really got to a point where I felt like, what am I even writing? And I did make a book for haikus because a long time ago I thought haikus were the most ridiculous nonsense poetry I'd ever heard of. I wanted it to rhyme and have all this fluid song and dance to it. And then one day somebody told me what they were trying to do with it, and it blew my mind. And so I started a haiku journal, but I haven't really kept up with it very much.
That's sick. That is very cool. You're so right about. I'm the same, that I should journal more. Like, my girlfriend makes journals and sells them on Etsy. A lot of different end of life journals, or therapy, mental health things, or just organizational planners. And she's so good at keeping a journal, but I do not do it at all. And it's everyone, every therapist's first sort of suggestion, right? Keep a journal. There's got to be something to it, for sure. The discipline required, though, and this detachment of, it's a skill to write your thoughts down. It's a skill, whether it's in haiku or a picture or anything, just to get those, to relax and actually get them down on the page. It's a skill set. A lot of people can't do it, and that's why I think it's suggested as therapy, because it's something for you to practice, where it's not supposed to be accomplished on day one. It's supposed to be like a marathon, not a sprint.
Well, one of the reasons I started wanting to make journals was because I became an eclectic, seeking, pagan type of person. I don't know what to call it. I don't have any tradition that I follow, but they have a journaling type of thing that's called a Book of Shadows. It's basically your magical journal and your magical diary of all your things that you've done. And there's a myriad of reasons why. It's more than just a record of which herbs you mixed to make the magic potion. It's your path. And
Oh,
so that you can come
yes.
back and go over it and experience what you did, what you didn't do, what worked, what didn't work. But also in writing it down, you manifest. That's your first act of manifesting that into reality, is writing the words. And later
Hell
in
yeah.
life, I've realized that whether you're a witch or not, I think it has big implications when you write down your thoughts. It gives them some solidity. It gives them some boundaries. And again, you can come back and look at them and edit them, or see how far you've changed from the last time you wrote it. That's a big deal. But
Yeah.
there's definitely a multi there's a benefit to doing it, and I've just been lazy.
So I'm listening to this podcast right now that's about Bitcoin and um, alchemy. And it goes into the history of alchemy, how before we had chemistry and science, the scientific method, there was alchemy. I don't know how much you guys know about alchemy, but it is this everyone thinks it's this process of trying to turn normal metals into gold, right? That was the goal of alchemy. Are you guys aware of that at all?
Yeah, I've studied it a little bit.
Right, right. And but then this podcast goes into how gold was the symbol of divinity and ideal. It wasn't simply wealth, right? It has this extra component of divinity, and how the alchemists, a lot of their writings would be philosophical. It wouldn't simply be measurements and I don't know, quantities or materialism. There was a huge aspect of alchemy that was interpersonal, dealing with the humility of knowledge. And so really it's interesting to me historically how alchemy became chemistry and science, right? But these early methods of like it was a necessary approach that in order to be a good alchemist you also had to be a good thinker. You had to be be able to think rationally, or at least humbly, those kinds of things, and those same principles, those same virtues carried on into the scientific method, being unbiased, those kinds of approaches to measurement. And so, like, yeah, I think that ultimately there's this new age alchemy, which has to do with journaling and writing down our thoughts. And like you're saying, being self-reflective. It's like almost like the old age, that alchemy that we thought was so, it's like locked in the past. I don't think it is. I think there's like this new age alchemy emerging, which has to do with updating the scientific method with some spirituality, or at least some morals and virtues. It's so cool how these things can be married like that.
It is really neat how those things can happen, and how the old always comes back into the new. It's really interesting to me.
Yeah, and like the search for the philosopher's stone, like the alchemists weren't just trying to convert any material into gold. They were searching for the quote unquote philosopher's stone, the elixir of life. And it's funny how, in the same way, science is kind of on that same search for some sort of ideal or some sort of technological advance that gives us, right, I guess, a better way of life, or helps us avoid suffering, those kinds of things. Like, there's a philosophical ideal to these principles that we can't just disregard. And it's not, you don't need to be a scientist, you don't need to be highly educated to participate in alchemy. That's what I find so interesting about alchemy, is like these pre-educated people in the dirt, mixing bugs and leaves together. But in the end, they had a spirit. It excavated their spirit. It made them, I guess, ideally, it made them better people, you could say, or it made them at least more knowledge searching than the dogmatists of their time, right? The religious fundamentalists of their time, the unquestioning believers in God who weren't even willing to look at the dirt, look at the minerals, those kinds of things. We prop alchemists up today somewhat, as the forefathers of knowledge and spirituality. And yeah, I think that like today we've lost touch with that a bit, but I think that there's our technology is kind of like pushing us in that direction. Things like Bitcoin, I know it gets bad rap, but like gold was the focus of an alchemist, and in modern day, I think Bitcoin's a good analogy or a good secondary sort of symbol of this divinity, right? This divinity, like why were the gods plated in gold? Why was gold this symbol of divinity and power, not just wealth? It has to do with its properties of like uncorruptibility, it doesn't tarnish, its half-life, it doesn't degrade, and similarly, Bitcoin has some similar standards and some similar properties that are very interesting that realign our culture today towards, I think, some better principles, some principles that are more aligned with like alchemy and true science and those kinds of things. I'm rambling totally, but yeah, some of my thoughts.
No, I appreciate those thoughts. I don't think you're rambling.
Yeah, I don't know much about the Bitcoin world, and I've only briefly dipped my toes into the alchemy world, but I know that most of the stuff in that realm is usually occulted on a multitude of levels. So it's like it has its surface appearance, but there was reasons for that. Or people found ways to look deeper than the surface appearance, way beyond the surface appearance. So I know that most people now have accepted that they weren't actually trying to turn lead into gold per se, or even to achieve gold. But gold does not just get picked because it's pretty either. Like you said, it has some pretty amazing elemental properties. The fact that it can't be corrupted or destroyed by any natural asset except for the ones we've created, I think, is wild to me. That it doesn't lose its luster. Just if you ever held like a couple ounces of gold, it feels magical. And it could just be because it's heavy, but it feels wild.
Yeah, and this podcast basically goes into the development or evolution of our ideal of divinity, and like whether our ideal of divinity is sort of evolving, because it used to be based in materialism, finding this material that was somewhat untarnishable and everlasting. It's also, I'm pretty sure gold is like the eventual future of like every mineral, isn't it? Like if once the minerals break down enough, I'm pretty sure gold is like their eventual destination after millennia of, I could be wrong about that, but it's like some sort of distillation process that gold is a result of, I'm pretty sure. But so yeah, this podcast is touching on like, well, maybe the divine in modern days isn't material. Something like Bitcoin or something that is at least in cyberspace might be a little more aligned with our new perspective of what the divine is, which is kind of trippy. I don't know. It's weird to think about. I'm not like a Bitcoin head. I don't care about Bitcoin, but I care about virtues and morals and ethics. And when I look at our banking and finance, I see a lot of problems there, a lot of corruption. And similar to gold, like the uncorruptibility of gold, Bitcoin does have a lot of properties that are aligned with those virtues. So that's what interests me in Bitcoin, not so much I don't really care, right? It's just this idea of like, oh, there's a money out there that is like virtuous and true. That's interesting. And it's making people rich. That's interesting. Right, those things seem compelling to me.
I feel like Bitcoin in particular, and definitely the altcoins though, are kind of hijacking the goodness of that paradigm shift that's coming through what I perceive to be the blockchain. And Bitcoin may eventually be the home of that in the future, but I see that as more of like where the regulation will land, because it will become regulated on some level. Right? It's too. I don't know. I can't. I want to say I could see a pathway where people could use that vehicle of the blockchain for seamless and instantaneous transfer of goods and abundance that would open up like I said, a new paradigm of wealth, what it means to have anything, what it means to share technology, information, money, etc. And Bitcoin just seems to be like a shoe that's wearing right now. But it feels to me, because it's been so substantiated, because it's been so like legitimized and used over and over again, when they do regulate it, because I don't know if we can really handle that kind of freedom, it'll land in Bitcoin. And so the government will get its hands around that. And it'll be better because of all of those things, but somebody's going to find a way to squeeze the blood out of that turnip, I guess. The excess that will come from that system, I think, is going to be monopolized by the same people that run the banking system. It'll just be better.
Yeah, there's a lot to say there. The pushback I have is that the standard of Bitcoin reorients even corrupt bankers, even corrupt governments to operate under what you just said, the standard, this new governing standard, which is uncorruptible. So it's almost as if, and this is where I do get lost a little bit again in the weeds. I don't know how true these claims are, but like, I guess the incentives of Bitcoin don't really allow for things like corruptions or monopolies. So the more someone does try to control the system or monopolize the system, the more they're going to deleverage themselves in the position of the market. That's the claim, I suppose.
Right. I think that the danger won't be in the, how do I say this, in the same way that this system of lack and scarcity provides for. It'll be in the way that abundance and prolific wealth provides for, because just like right now, you've got a whole bunch of wackos on my street that do nothing all day because they don't have anything. If I gave them all of the money and access to tools, weapons, and machinery that they could have, they'd be very dangerous to themselves and other people, and they would form cliques, and there would be other kinds of problems. So if this
they would squander the wealth. Kind of access, they would squander the wealth regardless,
or misuse it in a way that becomes a different kind of problem. Because right now the problem is delivery of those kinds of things, transfer those kinds of things, and who has access to it, scarcity and time and whatever. If that's gone and everybody has that, then there's a different kind of problem. I don't. That's why I say I think it has to be regulated, because it's not just about the people in power keeping power. I think they realize that we as a society aren't ready for that kind of freedom.
Yes. So yes to all of that. The regulation, the only difference in your and I's point of view here is that the regulatory standard, the new regulatory standard, will be, in my opinion, the Bitcoin standard, because it's the truest and the most honest, uncorruptible standard. So you're right that there needs to be regulation, right? But the problem is all of our regulators are corruptible. So from my vantage point, they're going to have to, as all these corrupted regulators are jumping ship because there's a sinking, the only life rafts available are going to be things like the Bitcoin standard. So, and you're right that will reveal new issues around abundance and scarcity, because apparently scarcity won't be the issue. So the quote unquote new regulation, there are going to be issues for whatever that new regulation will look like. But yet it's going to be delegated on the new life raft. I don't see right now we're dreaming about a bigger new ship while everyone's just jumping ship and getting to the life raft, you know? So you are onto something, but it's like the incentives are the real problem. It's like while we're hypothesizing about new standards and new regulations, money is seeping due to corruption, and the idiots are staying in the water while the smart ones are just going to the new floaty, you know?
That's exactly the point that I wanted to go to, and that's what I feel excited about and I'm trying to prepare myself for with my very little information that I've got and understanding of it, because I feel like the new paradigm coming is not going to be a panacea. It's going to be kind of a dual, what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's going to be a see what you want to see reality. And the new epoch, age, whatever of this new paradigm is going to have people who do regulate it, but it's going to be like a bigger raft, just like back in the day of the farms of 16, whatever, you know, it was very hard just to get food for the day. And there was an organization in the way that it ran, and then capitalism or whatever it was settled in. And now you can loan yourself to the moon and have ridiculous amounts of excessive opulent wealth at your fingertips. But there's other problems. I think it's going to expand in that way. And there's going to be, like you said, that bigger raft, but you have to choose to be on it. Because I think there's going to be an option in the way that this new way is going to run, where you can live in scarcity and live in lack and see the world as oppressive. And that in some weird, unfortunate way is going to fuel a lot of what it is the raft. So it's like, what do you want? What do you choose to see?
yeah, the divide will be greater than ever, because the divide will be a choice. It won't be education, it won't be elitism or classism or racism or nationalism. It will be a choice. And so the division will be a true culture war, because the line dividing the cultures will be consent. It will be a consensual line that you cross yourself.
The choice is the scary part, because so many people don't know how to make a choice.
And more they're being told that they don't have one. And I really, really think that that is insidious. I'm not a fan.
I'm not. See,
I know I'm the outsider on that. I know.
No, you're not. No, you're not. You are absolutely spot on.
I think the concept of free will definitely is necessary for those who are simple-minded. I think the simple-minded need to have the illusion of free will, and I think if that gets stripped away from them, that you're looking at a very dangerous situation in which psychopaths now have nothing hindering them, because they'll just use it as an excuse.
I was just going to praise you for that until you said the simple-minded. But I hear you. I just think that I love what you said the other day in your live, where you put up that there is no such thing as free will, but it has utility. I heard a similar statement from Rupert Spira, where he was talking to a scientist about it, and he's like, both are valuable. Which one do you want? You can live in the sense of determinism and give yourself over to the all, which is basically just submitting to God in a different kind of way. Or you can believe you have free will and operate that way. And I was like, I love that stance, because that's how I think it should operate. If you want free will, you use it to create, to choose, to embody, to embrace, to pick better. But if you want to let go and let God, if you want to let go to flow, open up to the higher consciousness, etc., then yeah, you could believe in the concept of determinism. It's when you're told that you don't have a choice and you're pigeonholed into a box and there's nothing you can do but what you're going to do, that I fight against with every fiber of my being. Like, nope.
Yeah,
not today,
ultimately, I think that's a lie too, because like I think the mediator between like materialism and our subjective perception of it is human action. Human action is the axiom from which we are all obligated to live. We must take human action. Even our inaction in some form or another is still action. There's no way for us to escape the paradigm of human action, right? We are all, that is the mediator between the material world and our inner world. And so when we are told the narrative that we don't have a choice in our action, we aren't fully aware of our action and our consequences. It actually is a lie. It eludes us of the truth. Human action and how we choose to act is the very axiom of our psychology that allows us to be rational human beings. The limits of our action is not a cage, right? The awareness of our consequences and the limits of our action are just the paradigm we find ourselves in. Nonetheless, human action and our awareness of it is a consequence of free will. You know, to be ridden and to be told that there is no free will, it is to tell a human that they could not act otherwise than they do, and they can. They very much, in every circumstance, can choose to act otherwise, right? Even when you handcuff them, put them in a box, gag tie them, do whatever to them, they still have the miracle of the human spirit still actually does work through those issues. Like, there is still freedom to act. There is, and if you don't hold that in your heart, if you think that's an illusion, then I am afraid of the apathy of your psychology, because you will be a frog slowly boiling in water, right? Your ability to act is the very thing that will get you out of your suffering, will allow you to escape your circumstances. If you don't think that's true, that you will just boil slowly in the water. So
I disagree with that to a degree. I think the concept of free will does have utility, but I do believe in determinism. I do think that the utility of free will is extremely important, or the utility of concept, because of those who would use the lack of to do horrendous things to others, because they would literally
Yeah,
use
I
the
agree.
excuse of it was already determined and I had no choice.
Yeah, I agree.
That's my opinion on it.
Yeah.
But do we actually possess free will? I think everything is predetermined by circumstance, and what we've been through in prior experiences.
Right. That is that's the other side of it. Yes.
That's definitely, the seeming logical argument that I've heard posed numerous times. The only problem I have with that is that the immense world of potentials that are hitting you at every given time, like there's no way that could ever be broken down to like a binary decision. Like I just think of it as, first off, I don't believe in a theory of time. So when people ask me, so you believe you could have done otherwise? I say yes, and I did do otherwise. This is just the reality I chose to perceive. All of it has already happened in my perception of things. Nobody likes that because it throws all of it into chaos, but hey, there it is. And then as far as being pulled one way or the other by influences, I just believe that there is an impossible ocean of things that are pulling on you at all given times. In fact, in kind of a strange way, the entirety of the universe is pulling on you at any given time. You're standing smack dab in the middle of it, and you get to choose. So I can't settle on determinism. I can let it be a potential that you can, quote, for lack of better terms, tap into flow. But I do believe that the utility of the idea of choice, even if it's completely wrong, is worth holding on to, and the other feels insidious.
I think it all feels insidious, whether it's free will or deterministic. I think all of it just, I don't know, the concept of all of it.
The fact that society's cooperative incentives rely on free will, I think, is an important notion to take seriously. I don't think it's something to scoff off as an illusion, right? The fact that the very thing that Kris, that you're saying, that if this utility wasn't there, we would possibly decay into chaos, true chaos. Well, that substantiates the truth, right? That substantiates not just the utility, but the actual selective, adaptive, evolutionary, I guess, truth of it. Like, I guess that might be an argument for determinism, isn't it? Like, I'm almost defending your point there, aren't I?
Yep, yeah. You sure are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's a conundrum.
But how then could it couldn't be, okay, here's the issue I'm seeing. It seems as though our choices make a difference in this process. So whether or not it's determined is irrelevant from our perspective, because from our perspective, our choices do make a difference, even if in the end Absolutely. They were determined.
Yeah.
Now, but is it choice free will?
Well, that's depending on how you define the word. I think that people defining it the way that they do in most of these conversations is completely incoherent, because they're talking about something that can't exist. So it's like, okay, let's define it as something that never could exist, and then say, yeah, that's not rare. And nobody uses it that way. Nobody. Except right. People trying to reach for something to make a point that doesn't even matter, because nobody experiences life that way. Right. There was a scientist talking with Neil deGrasse Tyson about it, and he was a determinist, a hard determinist. And he says, yeah, we live in a determinist world, but who cares? Because we act as though we don't. That was his statement on it. And I'm like, absolutely, I can get behind that. Because otherwise, the only utility I can see in telling people that determinism is how it is either for mental gymnastics, there's another word I want to use, but TikTok will get mad, or trying to disenfranchise somebody, trying to take power from somebody's religious belief, trying to I don't know, to hock them into a corner in a philosophical debate. But it doesn't do anything, because we still experience it as though we make that choice.
And the awareness of the choice is our metric for measuring someone's consent or like awareness of their consequences, right? If
Yeah.
someone, if we measure, if we use this as a metric and we truly determine that someone couldn't make this choice, that we feel like it was actually determined, we let them go, we let them off the hook,
Right.
somewhat.
Yeah, it's the difference between being intoxicated and being sober and making a decision, right?
Right.
The other thing, like I said, is the only time that I have a trouble with even wondering whether or not determinism is a thing is if I think of life as proceeding in this A theory of time way. And Darth said something that B theory of time is that way too. I didn't know that. I don't understand the theories well enough, but I thought the B theory was more on like a multiverse or everything's already happened and you're just perceiving your way through it kind of a way. So that's, I don't know the different theories. I just know that like the standard A theory of time is the only place that it has any trouble. And I think it's very myopic of us to believe that that's the way things have to be for all realities. And so I don't accept it. It doesn't make sense to me on a lot of ways for that to be absolutely set in stone the way that time proceeds.
Yet, now I'm realizing too, there's this element of like, well, everything happens for a reason. Everything happens for a reason. So that's like this like sympathy with determinism, I suppose.
Changed my way of saying that years ago. I don't say everything happens for a reason anymore. I say for everything that happens, you can find a reason.
Right.
Everything happens for a reason. Sometimes the reason is we're just predetermined to be idiots.
Yeah. Everything happens and you can pick a reason, however you want to put that.
Yeah, that's empowering, really, Bearcub, because then you realize that there you go, Kris. So the choice is once again put on the pedestal, because if you're determined, but you are able to choose the reason for that outcome, right? Now we are getting into, again, the psychology of choice.
But do choice and free will necessarily have to coexist?
Why not?
Can you have choice without
But they don't
free
have
will?
to.
Right. Can you have choice without free will?
Yes, you can have choice without free will.
Right.
Again, we have to define that term, because if you're talking about the will that's not impeded or dragged by any influence whatsoever, it's a nonsense statement. That's why I'm frustrated with people using that in arguments, because
yes,
if you stand in a position and you have somewhere to look and somewhere else to look, each one of those things is drawing you in a sense. You're being pulled in those directions. You're being nudged.
Like even God would have free will in that perspective, because right, yeah.
Unless time isn't a problem and all things have been done.
Well, now is time a problem for God?
That's what I'm saying. If all things have been done and you don't have a problem with perceiving all time at once, then you just get to choose which pathway through all that is, that has been and ever could be, and you choose your path.
But there again, it's still predetermined.
Well, it's all done in a way, but if infinity of things is done, then you're free to choose a pathway through that infinity. And you can have an infinite permutations of paths through that. It's not that, like I said, you have to go back to thinking of theory of time as being not done and will be done. As long as that's gone, then free will is, that whole determinism thing falls apart, because it has to have time. Sorry, I got something stuck in my throat. It has to have that procession of time to make sense that way.
Perhaps the outcomes of the physical laws could be determined, Kris, but from God's perspective in this example, that's not a limiting factor, because they could choose between the different manifestations of the physical laws, I suppose. Right, Bearcub? Something like that.
I didn't understand your statement. What was it?
Well, like time, he's saying there's all these things that have already happened from this theory of time, and Kris is saying, the consequences of those are determined. Yet you're kind of pointing out, nonetheless, from God's perspective, they're still able to choose all these different outcomes. If you want to call them predetermined or determined, you could. But nonetheless, there's still this element of choice, because he's stepping back outside of time, outside of material law, outside of matter, and choosing amongst the manifestations that have occurred. So whether or not the determinism is in the physical matter isn't determining his choice or God's choice in the one that is manifested. Does that make any sense? Is that right? Does that sound right?
I don't know that I'm following well enough. Let me try to restate it. So you're asking me, well, yeah, I have a hard time thinking about how you said that. Basically, I'll just try to tell you how I imagine it. Again, I don't have any proper education on this, just me thinking through it. But if I imagine an existence where all things already have been, then the God spark would be in every conscious mind choosing its pathway through it. But the thought of moving from one thing to the next is somewhat illusory because it's already been done in a way. It's not done because you're doing it, but it's that all things are is what you're choosing between. I don't know if that follows.
Okay. Yeah, no, that does. In a way, choice is an illusion because the set of things that you're choosing between could be considered all the same set, within all the same set. Nonetheless, you're still choosing amongst these different categories of things, and so there's choice.
From the perspective in the way that we're framing it. The problem, though,
yes,
which is one of the things that I love about the Christian theology, what's the word I'm looking for, adages that are coming back into my mind, is the judge not lest ye be judged has been smacking me in the face because I've been thinking of it less as judgment as like you did a bad thing and more like measurement, like judgments, rules, measurements. And it seems to me this world operates consistently in a way that if you seek measurement, you'll find it and it measures you back. So
yes.
If we look for it with certain words and certain measurements and certain concepts of sets and how they proceed and in a timeline, etc., the nature of even just the language we're using is going to define the answer that we find, but it seems to shape everything else after it too.
Yes. Even these concepts of determinism and like the concept of determinism in this sense is somewhat limited too. When we say everything's determined, it requires determined by what?
Right.
To Chris's view, we wouldn't need to know necessarily, right, Kris? Like it could just be determined, and we don't actually know what is determining it. But I suppose that does beg the question, right?
Well, let's just say that it's the laws of physics.
Right.
Which is like the scientist version of God.
No, it's just a set of constraints that can't be broken that determine the course. It's computable.
Is it true that Newtonian physics and quantum physics aren't unified, or is that just a trope, Darthnerder? Are they understood, or do they kind of contradict each other?
No, Newtonian's a very simple version of, and you don't really mean quantum. You mean Newtonian and like relativistic, right? You mean like Einstein and Newton. You don't. If you want, do you mean quantum and Newton?
Yeah. No, I guess I do mean relativity.
Quantum's kind of like weird.
I guess I mean relativity and Newtonian physics.
Exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And no. Relative Einsteinian physics is really just like a superset of Newtonian, where if you put in if your speeds are nowhere near the speed of light, then you have then the equations to enough decimals of accuracy are Newtonian.
Okay.
It's only like how fast you're going that becomes important. That you use relativistic equations.
So is there a limit?
Also, remember that we don't have a grand theory, right? So like gravity is still a conundrum in all this.
By grand theory, you mean like, I guess, this like trope of the unifying theory or a theory of everything.
Something that combines gravity puts gravity into with quantum, and like we don't know if and we don't have like a unified theory yet.
Yeah, so So go ahead, Bearcub.
I was just going to say on the gravity thing, I've been loving some of the stuff that Blitz has been putting out. I don't know if you've seen it, Darth, but he was talking about cotton candy gravity the other day. Have you heard of that?
Oh, I did see something. I don't know if it was from Blitz, but I read something about like a cotton candy effect where the planet's gravity is like cotton candy because it's gaseous or something.
Yeah, I only saw a
Maybe it
brief
was
blip of it.
Blitz. It might have been, yeah, it might have been Blitz. I forget where I saw it. It was either an article I read or Blitz. And since you're saying it was Blitz, that certainly makes sense that it could have been, yeah.
Well, what is gravity?
Good question.
Good question.
Right.
I just really love that Blitz comes out and shares some of those kind of, I don't know, moments. I really, really appreciate him.
Yeah. Blitz, yeah, he has some awesome stuff. Although he was wrong, I caught him the other day. He was wrong about something, and I sent him the article, and he was like, "Oh, this is cool." I was like, "Yes."
What was it?
Blitz didn't.
What was it?
I was reading this article about how it's kind of, and I still don't understand why, but basically you can take entangled photons and you can alter the frequency of one of them. You can essentially frequency shift it using kind of what turns out to be like standard mechanical optical stuff that we use in our networks. It shifts the frequency and doesn't disentangle. And I was like, I thought if you do anything to two things that are entangled, that you will disentangle them. And his answer was, "Oh, you can't shift a photon's frequency." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll send you the article." and he was like, "Oh."
Did he say something recently about photons going back in time and affecting themselves?
Well, there's this probably because there's a double slit experiment which is temporal that they did relatively recently.
Oh yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And that's sort of almost like a colloquial interpretation of that.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's an entanglement across time, not just so you get not entanglement. There's interference, I guess, across time. As well, the standard double slit is just across space.
What's your guys' thought on time? Like, do you think time is just like only exists through our perception, or is time like an aspect of the universe? Like metaphysically speaking.
I think it's both. I think we live in I think Einstein's right that he said we live. It's time space manifold, right? So time and space are just intertwined. They're not separate things. So yes, in some real sense, time is real. It's not just perceived, but we do perceive it also. So our perception of time isn't like, as they say, it's all relative, right? There's no. Yeah. It's hard. Our perception isn't truth, in a sense, right?
Yeah,
you can have two people perceive the same event differently.
Right. Yeah, like this term time can be obviously adopted in many different ways. We could represent the term with a lot of different meaning. The measuring what it is, right, has a lot of different implications than defining it. Like how we define it is obviously going to be related to our limited perspective on things. We can't measure all the way back in time or all the way forward in time, right? There's no way we have to measure it within our own scale. In a way, time is similar to any other term we use in physics, right? Like mass or length, or it's a similar mystery that the only way to find it is to bound it within a limit and then go out and measure it within that limit. But defining it in a way that's like all encompassing or foundational isn't really possible, I suppose.
I'm probably the most layman up here, and I've been prattling on about what I think about it from what I've gathered hearing many other highly educated people talk about it. But I was blown away when I came to the people talking about how it's kind of married with space, and that it's more about the
Movement?
curvature of space time. What?
Movement? Wouldn't it be associated with movement?
Yeah, and that's what I was going to ask Darth, because I remembered there was something about those two needing to be together, and I don't remember how to say it properly.
Which two? Movement and time?
Space and time.
Space and time. Yeah, exactly. So, we have this conception in our human perception that space is a thing and time is this separate axis, right? But it turns out that they're much more tightly coupled than that. And so, for instance, like you were saying, if you, let's say, as you travel towards the speed of light, from different. There was a good thing I saw the other day. If you look at like waveforms, for instance, right? If you uh, have some, like the Doppler effect for someone where the object's moving away from them and towards someone else, those two people experience the exact same event with different values, right? Because one will see, let's say it's colors, let's say it's optical. One will see something that's red while the other sees something that's blue in the object that's moving.
And even when I finally got to a point where the movement made a little bit of sense, like at first when I heard that in school, that blew my mind, that moving faster could change the passage of time. That didn't make sense to me. But thought it was comfortable with that. And then somebody said, if you're near something gravitationally dense enough, it changes the passage of time. And I was like, what?
Right, exactly. So, it has to do with like the general relativity and special relativity. So special relativity says like basically mass what is it? It's size and mass, length and time and mass are all directly tied together. So as your speed increases, relative to someone who's not moving, your
Yes, time is
your mass
different,
dilates. Your mass dilates,
and therefore the time dilates too.
How does that happen? Just being near something dense, like a black hole.
That's kind of like a different factor, right? So the black hole, now you have something where the mass is dilated already, and so in that equation of like how fast you're going, having something that's really dense and massive, right, is the equivalent of like going fast.
Yes.
Right.
Oh yeah, that's so cool.
That's
yeah.
just wild.
It makes me think that like speed is a derivative of distance over time, and so we can play with any of these variables, right? Like if we play around with speed, then right, time and distance are going to be affected. If we play around with mass of an object or the size of an object, then we're playing around with distance, and therefore speed and time are going to be affected. The equation, the derivative of speed it's a function of time, right? It's direct function of distance over time.
The thing that Einstein, one way to look at what Einstein figured out with special relativity is like we all thought time before that, we all thought time was a constant, right? But it's not.
Yes.
Like time changes is a variable just like space. And the thing that's held constant is the speed of light.
This is where I get into some weird, like how we could hold, like for instance, well, your name's Pi Chi. Pi is a constant. It's a constant that represents the ratio of the diameter to the radius of a circle, right? But this constant is an irrational number. It goes on forever. So I think this bumps me into sort of this. I don't know where I'm going with this, but this idea of a constant. Yeah, you're laughing at me because you know
where that goes either.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't quite know where I'm going with this, but how could it be a constant? How could it be a constant? How could something that's an irrational number that goes on forever? What does a constant mean? If that's a constant, what does it mean to be a constant? Because this number never ends.
Remember that it's a pure mathematics, right? It's not in the real world. So it can be a constant because it doesn't get affected
Okay.
by real world
Okay.
variables, right? It's pure
Okay.
math. And in math, you can have things like proofs, and you can have things like constants, and you can have things that don't exist in the real world, right?
Yes, that makes sense to me.
But
So,
the reason I came
yeah,
up originally was to talk about the free will thing, because
sure.
I think I agree with Kris on this stuff, and I think she was being less forceful than she might want to be.
She was being nice to
So,
me. She lets me
yeah,
get away
so
with murder.
exactly.
He
So
let
I'll be
Bear
the
get away with murder. He locked it too. I let them both get away with murder. And I know you could tell. I knew you were itching in the comments.
I was like, Kris, you're not gonna let them say that, are you?
They
It's all right,
Yeah.
Tom. I'll
could
die
do
on this
whatever they
hill.
wanted, and I would allow it.
right.
Oh, Chris, you're too nice, Chris. No, he's matching energy. What Kiss? Something about determinism and making choices.
Yeah.
Something
So
I said
yeah.
about human action, maybe.
Well, exactly. The thing is, here's where the way that you guys are thinking about it breaks down, right? You're thinking that there is some, um, even if there was some, let's grant that there could be some other possibility, and actually, it might actually be true that that's the case. Um, it is not obvious and or reasonable to believe that there is some conscious apparatus or mechanism by which human consciousness could choose between those things. So the way that there might be like the possibility of different paths taken, and let's say in a many worlds interpretation, for instance, is just at that like quantum randomness level, right? Where the what happens at a quantum level at a particular moment in time could be purely random. But even if it is purely random, and even if that purely random thing affects the mechanistic aspect of your consciousness as implemented by your brain, you would still have no conscious control over it. It's a quantum level effect. It's not a human consciousness level effect, right? Human consciousness is just something that is emerges as an emergent property from the brain. And in fact, we have lots of evidence that consciousness isn't even causal, right? Consciousness is a feedback mechanism of perception about decisions that we have already made. Um, so this concept of like what we think of as consciousness, which is this illusion of us interacting with the world, would then have um, some sort of mechanism by which to affect quantum randomness. It doesn't seem coherent. And I don't see any other mechanism by which human consciousness could affect the physical universe.
Other than the at the quantum level, you're saying.
Well, even at the quantum level, the only thing that we think there might be is this quantum randomness. And by
Yes.
definition, in order for it to be random, it can't have been affected, it can't have been caused by anything. There can't be any priors. There can't be any reason that it happens a particular way.
So and that's so and you view that. Okay, I'm trying to wrap my head now sort of around that point about and how it wraps into free will. I know I do hear you, but
So
I
free
feel
will would be
yeah.
something like if I were to hypothesize about like and describe like what does will mean
Right.
physically,
Right.
right? It would be something like you have a certain conscious thought, right? And that thought has the ability to affect the physical universe,
Right.
right? In a way that is determined by the thought.
Or wait, you almost meant to there would almost be the necessity to change what's already happened. Is that am I wrong about that? You because you would be able you obviously you accept that we could affect like we could affect things. We can choose to paint.
Yeah. So
Right, right,
we make choices all the time. We're constantly making choices,
right.
but they're not free choices, right? In other words, if there's two objects on the table, you can choose to pick one or the other. That is a real choice. But which one you actually pick up is not a free choice. There's going to be
Yeah,
a history up to that moment at which you pick up the object, which is completely deterministic physically and ends up being the object that you pick up. Now at some moment in our perception, we see that we have a choice, and our brain actually goes through the process of choosing, right? And our consciousness gets the feedback thinking like, I actually chose something. But all of that was completely determined by the laws of physics.
right. Whether so I'm a little yeah. So I hear all that. I'm a little confused as to what would be necessary for me to. What would my thought have to affect? Like, what would my consciousness? What would be a demonstration of my consciousness affecting the physical world in a way that demonstrates more than just choice?
I think if
Right.
we could describe it, there might be the possibility of free will. I don't even know how
Oh,
you would go
okay.
about describing it because it would have to
Right.
be outside of the laws of physics.
Right. Right.
The
Okay. So
laws of physics are causal, except possibly at the quantum level.
yeah. So like, okay. So under all those definitions, I would pretty much agree with everything you said. The issue. Okay. One issue I have is that for me, this concept of a free choice is the problem because I think
Hmm.
that's where you're bottoming out. I don't think there's such thing as a free choice. A
Right,
choice for
right,
me is
right.
defined by a trade-off. You have to trade between two things, therefore you make a choice. But that so I see that as basically what's the determined aspect of if you want to use that as like the laws of physics or the laws of
Hmm.
logic
Hmm.
determining we do like I see there. But outside of that, I don't see how choice isn't enshrined in this concept of free will. If we can make a choice truly between the two different outcomes, well then that requires some external decision maker, some sort of yeah, this is where I
Yeah,
guess I get
you'd
lost in
have
the
to
weeds.
believe in something like the soul, which is like this disembodied,
Yes.
non corporeal, not in the natural
Ma-
world,
yes.
non-material. It would material. Yeah, it would have to be non-material, I guess, in the sense that it doesn't obey the laws of physics in some sense. And there would be and to me, that's just, quote unquote magic, right? Because we don't have any evidence. We've never had any evidence in all the testing we've ever done that there's something happening which is not just measurable. And it would
Other
have to be
than
something that's not measurable.
other than our feet, we feel as though, like you said, we kind of have this innate feeling as
Yeah.
though
So
the illusion. Yeah.
that's the hard problem with consciousness, right? That would a whole different topic, right?
Yeah.
Consciousness, whether or not we're
Yeah.
conscious, is different from like whether we have free choice or free will.
Yeah. Yeah. They're interrelated though, but yeah, no, totally.
They're only interrelated in the fact that consciousness is the illusion. That is that thing that we have where we experience things is part of that experience is this illusion of free choice, right? Now, why do we
Yeah.
have that? Probably because evolutionarily, like, it's advantageous.
Does the I feel
That's
like
why we
this
have it.
I feel like
Mhm.
representing or drawing a symbolic representation of physical matter is somewhat magical or miraculous. Does seem
Mhm.
somewhat supernatural to me because
Well, I don't know about
specifically,
supernatural, miraculous maybe, in
well,
the colloquial sense, like, wow, it's really cool, and it is really cool the way everything
even in the
works.
term supernatural though, because like by
Well, but
definition,
supernatural, right? Has to be
yeah,
outside of nature,
well,
outside of
yeah,
nature.
yeah, by definition, we're like representing nature. The symbol isn't nature itself. If someone came up upon the symbol without knowing the language, they would just interpret it as a scratch on the wall. They wouldn't see the symbol. So
Which
symbology
symbol are you
does
talking about?
well any symbology, any
Uh,
symbology.
I'm not sure. You lost me.
Okay, well, like symbology by definition is a representation of the natural. So it seems
Well,
supernatural.
you mean it's a language? It's a language.
Yeah, but it's not natural in the sense that until you jump into abstraction, which isn't really it's not in the real
Well,
world like
I
math.
mean, you know, anything like that, I believe is natural and I believe is mechanistic. You know, I think it's just brain states.
The
I don't think
abstraction,
that
right?
metaphysics is like outside the physical world, right? It's just brain states.
Hmm.
Without
Yeah.
without the brain,
It's
metaphysics doesn't exist.
Yeah, and I agree with you. There does seem to be this like epistemological gap though between what is in that sense, like what is real and what isn't, like measuring someone's like I guess this gets again into the problem of consciousness, but like sort of like how do we measure, right, someone's thoughts or someone's this is where symbolic thing it's a
Well, we
reality, like
can to some degree now, and we
right, right.
will completely in the relatively near future.
I think there will. That's an interesting thought experiment, actually. Do you think there will someone's thoughts will ever
Not in
be
our
able?
lifetimes, but I
But
think,
but 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 do you think it will be possible to actually represent those thoughts like in a way that is 100% accurate, or do you think there
yeah,
will
yeah,
always be a
no,
gap?
100%,
Oh,
100%,
interesting.
100%.
I think there
Because
will
it's just
always
a
be a
by
gap.
look, the brain is just matter and energy,
Yes, but
and
sim. Mhm.
that's computable. That's computable. Not only computable, but we'll have cybernetics, so we'll be able to like interrogate all that stuff directly through mechanistic means.
Like a person, yeah. Interesting that you like. Yeah, I guess I'm seeing the limitation of like our own interpretation though. Like if we saw a black smudge that showed someone's dream on a computer, for us to interpret that black smudge seems it's similar to looking into like redshift in,
Well,
in space or something.
you know that we've now been able to read people's minds, right?
To a degree, yeah, like the new stuff
Using
that
Jesus, stay
will
the fuck out of mine.
Yeah, like there's lots of different ways to look at this, like predictability of someone's thoughts, or like something like the stuff that Elon Musk is doing, right? With a person being able to control a computer with their mind. There's lots of
Mhm.
different ways of. Is there another way, like, of reading someone's mind? Like, what's the most?
Well, no, so
Yeah,
what they've been able to do is like, and it's not perfect, but it's the early days of doing it where, you basically what we can do is, measure, put sensors on your head and, show videos, let's say, and they've done this with different experiments, but one is they show images to the person and measure, the resulting signals, right? And then um, if you and while they're doing that, they take those signals and train a neural net to do the pattern recognition of those signals, right? So they say, when you train a neural net, basically what you do is you say, here's the inputs, which in this case would be the signals, and then at the end, it's supposed to predict what the image is, right? So you have the neural net try to predict the fact that it's the image that you're actually showing the person. And you keep doing that, and the neural net gets better and better at being able to predict, to associate the signals with the images. And then you can just show the image to the person and read the signals and say what they're looking at and see what they're
Is it
looking at.
unique? Is it unique to each person, or can they like map a brain and then look at somebody else's brain and go, that person's now
Yeah,
thinking
yeah.
the same thing?
Good question. I think the experiments that they did were unique to the person, but I would imagine that there is generic association. We're this thing is like at such a low
Right,
resolution level in terms of reading the signals
still so cool
that
though.
right.
yeah,
Is
yeah,
it unique over
yeah, and
time?
people's brains, while they're very different, while they're very much the same, they're also different, so
Yes. Is it unique over
uh
time? Like when they measure one person's brain, is it the same 3 months later that they think about something and it shows the same pattern?
Good question. I don't I don't know that they tried that, but I would
Right.
imagine it would be similar. And then this same method of like training a neural net to predict what a signal means. There's non-brain versions of it that gives kind of some insight into how it works. Also, if what I just described is too opaque, like for instance, you can take a Wi-Fi router, and they can use a Wi-Fi router now to look through walls to see
It is scary.
and see where a person's moving on the other side. And the way
I
they
heard
do
they
that
could.
is exactly the same, right? What they do is the Wi-Fi router sends out signals and receives signals bouncing back. And in terms of the signals that it receives bouncing back, they record those signals, and they have a camera looking into the room, and a person's moving around, and they train the neural net to be able to predict where that person is based on and associate it with the signals that the Wi-Fi router receives back. And then what you can do is you now have this neural net that's trained that way. And if you have a person moving around in the other room, the Wi-Fi router signals you send them through that same neural net, and it tells you where the person is.
And it doesn't even have to be like a fancy Wi-Fi router, right? Like they can do it with
Right.
basic stuff.
Exactly. That's why
Terrifying.
that's why like the measuring the head signals doesn't actually have to be fancy. It's the same thing. It's just a matter of getting
Well, to be
signals that
fair
are,
though,
yeah.
that's only because technology now is so advanced. Like you couldn't do like 10 years ago, you couldn't probably do this with the same technology, but like because we have like so much higher like essentially like resolution Wi-Fi
Which
and
part of
all these other things.
you think? I don't know if the Wi-Fi is the resolution. I think more about it's
Well,
being
I
able
don't
to
think it
have
is
enough.
necessarily
I
that, but
think
like
I think it's being able. I think the new variable is just the depth of the networks, the accuracy, the modeling.
yeah, but
Totally.
This
those are
The
is
actually
model.
like, yeah, that's what I mean. But like, I could think of like, fair, yeah, yeah. But the point is still like the greater point is essentially just like the technology has gotten so much better that's
Yeah.
commercially available that you can now
Yeah.
do these things because to get that precision before you had to have it like custom made by like a expert company to like get that level of precision like it's an expert's
Yeah.
tool, but
Yeah.
now every fucking router has it, so
Hmm.
it's
Yeah.
crazy how like because people forget like, hey dude, like I feel like people forget that whole thing, you know, that thing that's like, oh, the computer in like the Apollo like landing thing is like fractions as powerful as your like phone, right? Like I
Hmm.
think people forget you could run like unironically billions of that program on your phone nowadays and it would
Yeah.
still probably run fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
And so, by the way, besides the visual thing, they've also done experiments with the thoughts that people have in terms of like language. So you can actually, they've been able to have something that models what the person is thinking in terms of language,
Sure.
and be,
Well, even
and
like
have
This
it
chat
be
is
G,
relatively
even
accurate.
chat GPT is kind of on that level, but you're talking about somebody more depth about like actually interpreting the person's thoughts, hey?
Exactly.
See, here's the
Exactly.
Yeah.
thing. Actually, I have a weird question to Darth because you're a huge AI guy. I feel like the dead internet theory has come true, and
What's the dead internet
also
theory?
where the internet is mostly inhabited by bots, at least for the West, because it seems like a lot of traffic on the internet is run by bots, especially in the West.
Nillz, are you a
Um,
bot?
God, I wish. If I am a bot,
I
I'm
was always, I
sadly a
knew there
bot
was a
that's
reason I was
smarter than most of
suspicious
the
about you.
populace.
You're a really good bot if you're a bot. That's an impressive
Yeah.
one.
Listen, if I am a bot, I'm an AGI, so I deserve, or yeah, artificial
Oh
general
my God,
intelligence. Yeah.
Princess Love Island is
So,
my favorite show. I freaking love that show.
Yeah, Darth, have you heard of the new one called Surviving Paradise? Y'all got to get
Uh,
on this, dude. It's so
what's it
funny.
on? What's it on?
I think it's Netflix. They So they have the typical reality show, but half the villa has to sleep outside, and they vote who has to sleep outside. Dude, it's good. So everyone else is in the posh villa getting buffets and sitting by the pool party, while the other half is like out by a fire sleeping in the dirt, and they have to like compete to get back in the villa. It's pretty funny, man. If you like
I feel like I did see something where like the guys would get kicked out and they'd have to go. I don't think they really made them do it, but they made it look like they had to hang out and sleep in a little like locked in wooded area.
Yeah, that's
Is that
it. That's
is
it. It's
that
called
it?
Surviving Paradise. You gotta watch it, man. It's
I
hilarious.
think I might have seen it. Yeah.
It's pretty funny. It's crazy because it devolves into like the trustworthy people are the ones that are outside the villa, and everyone who's inside the posh villa. That becomes like where all the drama is. It's super true. Like some pretty interesting social things that are going on there. Nillz, I wanted to quickly say the truth in math thing is a bit of a troll, but I understand. I understand that like mathematical statements are bivalent. We can assign truth values. But
I don't even know what the fuck that statement means. I still don't understand what the fuck. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I just don't know what the fuck that means.
What part?
Truth. Like, why is it in quotations? What does it
because
mean?
The troll is that
not be in math.
Well, the troll is that it's an English word, and math is not right. There's no English words in math. We can assign truth values to a bivalent equation, but a lot of people I think do use this word truth colloquially or loosely, and they don't really think deeply about what the word truth means. So more than attacking math, this is probably an attack on the word truth. But yeah, I obviously I understand that like math, you can assign truth values to math statement, but there's no word truth that I could be wrong on this.
Like math isn't necessarily a true thing in the real world. Like you're comparing it to reality truth.
Right.
Okay, never mind. I understand now. Yeah, I agree. Okay, yeah. Okay.
I just like talking about it too. I like talking about those concepts too because it relates to sort of what we were getting on here with Darthnerder and like I don't know, consciousness, AI, how we interpret our thoughts. One area I'd kind of like to take this would be the idea of like, because we're talking about modeling and we're talking about language and people's thoughts and how accurately we can sort of measure those things.
This actually perfectly ties in what I wanted to ask Darth about, and I was talking about the dead internet theory where it has to do with like all the bots. And one of the things I was wondering was there's so much, because one thing I was noticing was like, but as I spend like, this was when I first started to get on TikTok, and I was like, man, feels like a lot of people talk like fucking bots on TikTok. And I mean like in the guest requests, but I know they're real people because they'll have their video on or whatever. And I'm like, why is that? It's getting harder and harder to tell the difference. Are people just like that dumb? But now that I've realized so much of the traffic on the internet is bots, I wonder if this is like actually affecting our like literacy rates, because most of what people are reading are like butchered English written by like crappy LLMs to try and like instigate political discourse or discord. Not discourse, that would be good, and it's like, is this actually like destroying language?
I think you're onto it. I think you're definitely onto it. I think there's definitely a decline somewhat in literacy, or like I think literacy is being popularized, but like at the same time the quality of literacy is not. Like people are actually, barely literate.
If I remember correctly, I read an article about this specifically, and it was talking about like, is the language that people use, if people are using emojis, for instance, to transmit information and stuff like that, is there a decrease in sort of cognitive ability associated with that? Or is it just a different expression medium?
See, I think emojis are different, though. I think emojis still can convey some sort of interesting substance, right? The problem with the bots is there isn't much substance to what they're saying.
There's no substance. There's no substance. It's literally just what do you call it? It's like catchphrases. It's just catchphrases.
I would say there's substance. Well, I would say there's a substance, but it's more like. This is how I describe it. So, and I notice this when people are like trying to skibbity around questions. I hate you. You cursed me. Yeah, but the whole idea is that like you have the most important thing when it comes to like a consistent theory of reality are your landmark facts and your surrounding details, okay? You should have like a clear through line, A to B to C, like a thesis of what your theory is, like a simplification. Like, for example, general relativity is mass, or like mass energy bends space-time, and as space-time and mass energy moves through space-time, which it bends, okay? Like, yeah, very like a simple kind of like rough through line, and then you explain like this is the core details, right? The landmark facts, and these are the details surrounding it. For example, the details surrounding it might be like black holes and the Schwarzschild radius and all these other things. But the core facts, the landmarks, are like the equation, the idea of space-time, the mass energy stuff, right? And what the bots do is they only ever talk about details, but never give landmark facts. So you are basically given, and this is actually like a really fucking big brain manipulator tactic, because the whole thing is, in fact, a great example is that the science creator that was recently outed, he was giving people only details, never landmark facts about him, his person. And so everyone came to the same conclusions because of the details, but for different reasons. And so we had all a different core story, so it's harder for us to all put it together.
You could even have conflicting. You could even have conflicting conclusions.
Wait, no, you have the same conclusions usually, but you can have conflicting like landmarks, right? Like the way you got to those conclusions are all conflicting, but the conclusions are all the same. And so unless you dig further or go way or extrapolate way further, you're never going to figure it out. And that's what bots do as well. So I feel like people are being like fucked over literacy wise, and they're like, oh, they don't know how to like put together arguments or thoughts because they don't have landmark facts. And as we know from George Orwell's fucking writings in 1984, and or at least what he claims through his writings is, you control the language, you control the people. And it's like, this is the greatest fucking example of this. Cybersecurity attacks with bots to destroy language, and especially the idea of truth, by making people unable to understand how the importance of landmark facts and details, which match together with landmark facts. Because your landmark facts aren't very strong landmarks unless there's a bunch of details around it. For example, you can have a statue in a forest, but unless there's foliage around it, maybe like a path up to it, etc., all these details, you won't actually be able to follow the path. And the path won't make sense. Right? So it's like both these things are important, but they always cut out one. And that's what I think is like fucking over people's literacy and ability to find truth. And I remember reading about this in a cybersecurity paper, and I was like, I think it was released by the Pentagon too. So I was like fuck, it's part of the reason why I simp for the military. God damn, they do some good science. But yeah, it's basically just like, the biggest threat right now is cybersecurity, because essentially if we get like, the biggest danger is, you can have a bunch of bots essentially talk to each other and weave their own entire reality that exists within the mind of these bots and is internally consistent and has their own facts, own ideas, own articles, own everything. Right?
The most like specific thing that I see, the pattern is that a good meme will always troll the details to both sides of the facts, right? You will be able to interpret a meme no matter which side of the political fence or whatever.
I think that's a bad meme, personally. I think if your meme is unclear in its intention, that's a bad meme. That's very good at spreading meme. I think that's a bad meme because usually those types of memes, the idea, I think like the vagueness makes it like really bad. I think the memes that work the best are the memes that are like, hey, here's a clear concept. This person, blah, 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 and it's just like you just swap out the variables, right?
Yes. When we're saying good or bad meme, like I'm talking about your point about literacy. The ones that devolve into illiteracy are the ones that propagandize division through details without these foundational facts. The ways that details
never mind.
See what I'm a meme that really sows discord, one that really makes the illiteracy spread, is one that is vague in its semantics and that can be interpreted multiple ways. And that's the troll. That's the very meme. That's the very crux of the spread of the virality of the meme. If it was partisan, only one half of the political side would pick the meme up. The very fact that it's spreading viral through all sides of and sowing discord shows the right.
Actually, no, it's even worse than that now, because you're literally what's happening is what I call it the spaghetti principle, but I forget what it's, or the spaghetti sauce principle. I forget what it's actually called. There's an actual principle that's named after the spaghetti sauce story in advertising and in marketing and like product creation and engineering and all this shit. But essentially, the story is there's this company, and they're like, we need to make the perfect spaghetti sauce to like own the get the market share, right? And so they hire this person who's known to be like this bigwig, like amazing, like advertising genie, right? And he's like, how can you get us to like get to the market share? And he's like, oh, you just need the perfect like sauce. And he's like, well, how do you get the perfect sauce? Do you know the formula? And he's like, well, there's no one perfect sauce. And so he basically is like, why just stick to one formula? Just make a bunch, try it all at once, right? You have the resources, do it all at once. And that's what's happening with the bots too. Some are hyper partisan, some are not partisan, but the whole point is that they weave a narrative to try and lead you into an alternative realm of facts that's internally consistent to the bots, but doesn't match our reality. So you're essentially hooking people into fake realities and giving them fake facts and essentially giving them schizophrenia. You're like gang stalking these fuckers IRL with bots. It's automated gang stalking.
I think it's enough to just sow the discord without an agenda, because the reality will fractalize enough that you'll just question what reality is. As long as you can get the person to complete nihilism. Yeah. Once you get to nihilism, questioning reality itself, existential
nihilism. It's paranoia. It's insane paranoia.
Yep. So, but often due to like this existential sort of nihilism, not knowing what's true, what's the meaning of life, nothing has any purpose, what's the point of anything. I would consider this a form of nihilism, I suppose.
Hold on a sec, guys. I want to hear what Bear's talking about.
Sorry.
So Bear, which thing about new tools and how is that related to a class that you took?
It may be a bit removed from where you were when you said it, but I heard you saying basically when Nillz was bemoaning the way that the world is going with emojis and crappy pigeon speak or whatever.
Emojis I was fine with. It was the bots.
Yeah, but just like basically people's ability to speak is being curtailed by this.
Yeah. And
you
I was
said
saying
something to the effect of maybe they're just new tools, new versions, and I've been open to that possibility from a class on rhetoric I listened to a couple times from Berkeley.
Oh, that makes sense.
The guy was suggesting that maybe it's just a new form of communication, because I've learned to be a lot more generous when I listen to people who talk in a way that I would have previously thought was less than intelligent, and then I listen to them, I'm like, no, they're very intelligent. They just speak differently than me.
Right.
And they may speak very street, very broken, very.
But there can be just as much. Yeah, but there can be just as much subtlety and information being passed.
I love
it. Sometimes if you meet them,
I think you're missing my point, though. My point isn't like those.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't contrary to
your
point.
wasn't talking about you.
Sorry. I'm being dumb.
I was trying to build on something that Darthnerder said, because I feel like there's something really interesting.
I'm going back to the quarter. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I think there's something really interesting in opening up to that possibility, because I believe that there is this amazing genius that comes out of us even when we are curtailed by our surroundings.
Exactly. What's interesting is that, our brains have these areas that have abilities, basically, right? So we have sections that are really good at like pattern recognition. We have sections that are good at like logic and stuff like that.
Sections that are good at pleasuring Darth's mom.
Wow.
I mean, those sections go further.
You're mute. You're not muted, Nillz, right?
Yeah, I know.
Okay. I'm just checking. But
I'd be more worried if I was.
So what's interesting is that like those sections can get repurposed for different contexts.
Right.
So
I think it's amazing.
that's how like supposedly like they did fMRIs on like chess grandmasters, and they could see that the location in the brain that was highly activated when they were looking at a chess position is the same little area of the brain that we use to recognize faces, which is just
Right.
like incredibly good at pattern recognition. And
Yeah.
so it's
Well,
like repurposed for that.
that's
Actually,
what
one
I'm
thing
leaning
that's
on, because
also
it's like,
interesting is, oh, sorry.
you're okay.
So we're like, we
I may
have
be
all
way
this
off topic. It's
functionality that we can use for different contexts, but it's just as capable. The brain's just as capable. You're just training it to use a different medium.
Wait,
yeah,
actually, another example of that is they did the same thing with I think it was like basketball players where they were like looking at their brains and stuff like that, and while they're like playing basketball, and because they were like, what is the difference between like top athletes? And they're doing all this analysis and like on like, and they're like, wait a second, it doesn't seem to be a very big like athletic difference between the top athletes. The difference is mental. If you look at their brains, they're basically the same thing that's going on with chess grandmasters when they're trying to like predict their opponents. The game isn't even happening physically. It's actually everyone is using their foresight to think moves ahead. So people aren't like, and it's insane because it's like they're adjusting their moves based on like small reactions on the other person. So most of the game isn't even like displayed. Most of the game is still in the heads of the person, of the players. And I'm like, wow, this is exact thing appears in like every top level thing. Sorry, I just want to glaze Darth a bit.
No,
It
makes total
also
sense.
have his mom glaze me. Got him.
Oh, jeez. Nillz.
The emoji thing is really cool because in reality the emojis are a universal language. Anyone could interpret an emoji. It doesn't require a strict grammar or syntax. There is some universal utility to emojis. I've written some articles on the universal language of emojis, or how they might relate to like hieroglyphs, or like ancient, maybe some getting in touch with like an ancient ancestral language that's more, again, universal, or a deeper pattern recognition, right? Like something that's more fundamental.
Here's an interesting piece of tidbit to associate with that is that Eastern languages like Chinese and stuff um, are much more pictorial than Western, right? They don't. A lot of it's like
Characters.
not
Yep.
not just letters, right? It's characters that have some kind of visual interpretation, and like they have 10,000 different characters or something. And so that actually sort of allows them to do different abstraction as they grow up as young children, right? Because it's visual
Yes.
for language, not just this sequencing of letters.
Yes.
Actually, I think there's an interesting study to also back this up. I think, I forget what it's called. In my head, it's called the Zit and Boogoo study, because essentially you get two
You
shapes.
just made that up, Nillz.
I'm not. It's something like that. It's some weird name, right? The idea is that these aren't real words, right? They just have like sounds. And they show people two shapes. One shape is kind of like round and like blobby, with like blobby appendages, and the other is like sharp and jaggedy with like spiky appendages, right?
I saw that.
They're just shapes, and they go like, "Hey, which one do you think is Zit, and which one do you think is Boogoo?" And most people will look at the round thing and be like, "Oh, well, that's Boogoo." No matter the culture, no matter the whatever. It's like we seem to have some sort of bias. Like certain sounds seem to elicit certain ideas.
Sounds can be sharp. Yeah.
That's what the rhetoric guy was talking about, and it was amazing because he completely transformed the way that I thought about language. And when you were talking about its limitations, you're right, there are limitations, but oftentimes it's in the person receiving it. It's not in the person using it. So if you look for the way that it can work, and you become a better listener, or you become a more generous interpreter, like we are brilliant, and it's just a vehicle to transfer information. If we could find a better way to do that, I think we could do leaps and bounds.
I forget who it is, but you just reminded me of somebody who the way that they describe language is as basically developed as charades. Like communication is all charades.
Ha ha ha.
Right.
Yes.
And so, you can think of like you can communicate to other people visually by doing charades, right? And then there's all these sort of like stepped up versions of that, more formalized versions of charades. And that's
Are
what
you telling me
is.
language is just one long
Right.
charades game and like passed
Correct.
down as a game
Kind
of
of.
broken telephone?
Exactly.
Kind of. Yeah.
I see
It
it.
literally changes the way your body moves. It changes the way you breathe. It changes the way you hold breath in.
Mhm.
It's amazing when you start digging
And so
into it.
people understand when you make certain motions what you're trying to convey, right? Because it has some mapping to the real world.
Right.
And then you can make that more and more abstract. And then once there's this sort of like agreed upon shortcut of like conveying that information, right? You're still just doing charades.
So in that sense, I feel like that demands some humility. That demands from the listener some sort of it's like a presupposition that the epistemological gap between my interpretation, what the person's saying, demands my humility, demands my own emotional stability in the interpretation, because I have to empathize with their position. That's what's required of me here, not
In
my
order to have
own.
maximum,
Yes.
Wait,
in order
I
to
would say
receive
I
the
would add
maximum amount of information. Yeah.
I would say it's a
Yes.
little more complicated than that, but I agree with all these ideas. I just want to quickly tie them up in a way, just to wrap it back to the AI thing as well. This is the exact problem I think AI is causing, because you're talking about all these things with, charades, right? If this is a charades game, normally, if you're playing charades with humans, when there's a failure to communicate, you know what the human does in charades? They cross their hands and say, you didn't get it right. You know what the bot does? You got it right. Continue saying other random shit, right? And you notice this, and it's like, oh my god, this is how like people talk on TikTok now. And I'm like, oh fuck, is there like a either these people are actual bots and we're actually in dystopia, or these people's English has been like destroyed in some way. And it feels strange that it's so similar to these bots, but it makes me think like, oh, they've been like operant conditioned, or like they've been conditioned such that they don't have a lot of patience or empathy to understand another person, because the bots always act as if they understand them.
Bear, do you remember the other day in my live, the conversation that happened and how I texted you and I was like, what the fuck are they talking about? Do you remember that, Bear?
Which part?
The two guys that came in that had to have been related to Rory.
Oh, yeah. The Uncle Rory's stepchildren.
That was the weirdest shit. We didn't understand a word of what they said, but they understood each other. It was the weirdest thing.
They acted like they were. I swear they were trolling. That had to be an Uncle Rory scenario.
Talking about a guy taking a crutch from them and beating each other over the... I don't know. It was the weirdest shit.
It went 16 ways into wildness.
Princess, welcome to the panel. Feel free to jump in anytime. I've never met you before, so just giving you.
She usually doesn't say anything unless there's a chance to mock me.
What?
Oh,
I do not.
We'll get along.
I don't mock you.
You just tell the truth.
The only one who mocks you is yourself. When
Like
you
when I was in the chat, I wasn't mocking you. I was really mocking Dream.
Excuse me, I'm unmockable.
Neener.
Literally getting on about bots when he can't freaking breathe.
Listen, okay? That's why I can eat your mom out all night.
Oh my god.
Nillz, I can't.
Oh.
I can't. I can't. I think I just died.
So
You need to wash your mouth out.
Kris, I feel like you haven't been talking.
After last night, I do.
Oh my god.
Nillz, you gotta stop.
Listen, they're setting me up, okay?
I know, setting you up for success.
No, setting me up with their mom. Fuck. Okay, you need to stop setting me up. Okay, you can't just set up a dunk
Are you
and
just
not
like
have a
admitting
man.
that you have a thing for older women?
I mean, doesn't everyone?
I'm done.
I do not think everyone does.
Okay, well then they're not a person to me.
I know.
They're a bot.
They're a bot, yeah. That's how I know they're a bot.
Okay, so my question is there an anecdote? Is there an anecdote, Nillz? And if you say someone's mom, is there an anecdote for this? Could something be popularized or educated to protect the masses from the bots?
You were fixing to say from the mom.
Your mom.
Is there so?
I was waiting for a mom anecdote. Exactly. I literally thought he was asking.
If you're asking if you can protect your moms from me, the answer is no.
Just lock Dream up. How about that? Just lock him up.
No, I thought he was asking whether Dream.
I nod through the lock.
Nod. Just banging against the bar.
Nod means like using my teeth.
This is encouraging bad behavior and bot activity online.
Oh no, my audio is not working. Can you guys hear me?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you.
Cool.
If your audio is not working, don't worry. You weren't missing anything but your mom's.
Apparently.
I thought the question of the AI thing. One of the things is just like, I don't think it matters if you can tell apart an AI for a human. And that sounds weird because the thing that should matter is the information. So if you're not looking at that and being like, does this make sense? Like, does this like fit? Does this overlap properly? Does this match with reality, etc.? If you don't have the tools to even like discern reality or like truth to begin with, to discern fiction from nonfiction, you're already fucked, right? But as long as you have those skills, it doesn't matter what or who says it, whether it's an AI or a human. If it's wrong, if it's misinformation, you have the skills to figure it out. The same skills have never really changed when it comes to being like skeptical and like inquisitive. Funny enough, curiosity has worked for all of time, it seems like, when it comes to trying to figure out truth. Not to say that figuring out truth is good, because usually it leads to your demise, but in this case it hasn't so far. But
you use curiosity as the conditional there, right? Like truth along with curiosity, and truth is not, if truth finalizes your curiosity, then it's not truth.
Yeah. Well, not necessarily that. It's just you always want to dig deeper, right? Like you're always willing to be like, okay, like one of the things that I always keep for all of my beliefs is what is the thing that would collapse this belief? What's the silver bullet? And I have that in my mind. If someone's like, hey, what would convince you the earth is round or the earth is flat? Sorry, I've exposed myself a bit. But if I am a psyop. But what would
Jesus!
This is a flat earther. I knew it.
What would convince you that the earth is flat? And it's like, I actually do have an answer. If you could construct me a mathematical model that had the same predictive and building power that I use every day, right, with like magnetism, and you can do all of it, like do the stuff that I can like locally test, like Maxwell's equations, et cetera, if you can derive all that such that it works, along with all the other forces I know of, and explain the chemistry and all that, and a flat earth, all fucking change, okay? Like that. Same thing with God. I'll be like, I have like all these conditions, these silver bullets in my head, and keeping a knowledge of what is your silver bullet, your kryptonite for your argument, is really important, and knowing if it's a reasonable kryptonite.
Yeah, so you're saying that the stability of our psychology almost relies on these silver bullets and awareness of the limitation of your own bias or your own assumptions. Literacy somewhat depends on this awareness. If someone thinks that reading a book and believing everything in the book without skepticism is literacy, and they don't follow through with a bit of curiosity and questioning their own assumptions that they derive from the book, then they aren't really literate. Literacy depends on this method, which, is, again, I think, dependent on some sort of, I'm getting weird here with it, but some sort of like spiritual humility, some sort of humility to to the limit of your own knowledge, which again fuels, I think, curiosity. If you arrive at your destination and you think you know it all, or you've got the answer, or you know what's true, well, then you become apathetic and you don't really, what's the point of looking further? So it seems like this literacy, to make your point, to bring your point home, the function or the method that we need in order to be literate seems to depend on some inner spirituality, or at least humility, if you want to call it that.
I made up
Honestly, this is my hot take. Just get fucking kids to read longer books or like longer forms of literature. Okay?
Kids aren't reading. What are you talking about, Nillz?
Logic. You remind me of a little aphorism I made up, which is the road to mastery starts at humility.
Oh,
it's really good, man. Yeah.
I feel like if I Google that,
to sum this entire conversation up, I think y'all are just going back to the basic reading skills that we're all supposed to learn. Which is,
considering most people can't read at a college level. Most people can't comprehend at a 12th grade high school level, or much less a college level. It's really sad in this country.
Dude, that messed with me when I learned that, especially because, like, literacy in my household was, like, super
most important.
fucking hammered on. Like, like, that's why, like, my mom was really good at literacy. Like, she's very talented in literacy. My sister's gifted in literacy, but on the flip side, my dad's
your mom is talented, Nillz.
You're
right.
Oh, that was a flip of the script.
Yeah.
She set me up with your mom. That's why I know she's talented.
Oh my God, I'm done.
That didn't even make sense.
I just realized if determinism is true,
me, you fuck. I'm sorry. I guess like apple does fall far from the tree. Didn't need the beauty or the smarts. Jesus Christ.
Jesus
I just realized if determinism is true and you read a lot of books, you're literally indoctrinated.
Shut up, Bear. I'm done. Bart said that he can confirm that Darth and Nillz' moms are both talented. Damn, Bart gets around.
Bart is for the streets.
So. Bart's for the streets.
Bart's a gangster.
He's like a floating paper bag in the wind.
Oh, Jesus Christ. That's a plastic bag. Plastic
bag. Darth, do you think eventually you'd be able to like quantify or measure someone's humility with AI, or with do you think we could actually go into the brain and find the locus of humility?
Thank God, I thought
I don't think. No, I think that's a much higher level. I think humility is a much higher level concept than the kind. I don't think it's a low level measurement.
But like, you think it might be possible?
No, I think we'd be able to compute it, but not. I think we'd be able to compute it, but not like measure it in that sense.
Okay.
Like, we can always apply a metric to some system, right? The question is, can we apply a metric that is transferable between systems, right? Like, okay, we've set up a system to test this thing in this person's brain. Is the thing we're testing in this brain the same thing we're testing in this other brain? What if we're not testing humility in this other brain? What if we're testing like, I don't know, some boobility or whatever, some fucking other emotion, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, fuck, like, and
that's
like the bigger
why
problem.
I don't know
we
if
need
you
that,
were here.
like,
I don't know if you. Yeah, you were in the. You maybe right before you came up, Nillz. The point is.
Sorry, I was trying Logic's mom, so I might not have caught it.
You can train that by like asking, right? You can interrogate and say things, or like what they do with the fMRIs of like the basketball players and stuff like that is they say imagine yourself taking a shot, or running down the or watch this video of a basketball scene, right? And then you measure the person's brain. In the same way, you could say like, try to have some kind of feedback about them either being humble or thinking about being humble or something like that. And then in that same way, you train to be able to recognize it.
Be humble.
So yeah, even those high level concepts, you could, interpret them if you had high enough resolution signal processing.
I guess. Go ahead, Bearcub.
No, you're fine. I was just, you made me think of how excited I am to see when they start mapping things like emotions and humility and kindness rather than you dreamt of a chair or something like that. I'm really interested to see what that looks like.
Yeah, well, Darth doesn't possess any of that, so.
See, I do it.
There's the trolling. There's the trolling.
Oh. My trolling is seen as inadequate, princess, but that's okay. Jesus. People have no.
How many moms have you brought up?
Almost all of them.
Only as many
blah,
as I've
blah,
named.
blah. You want to talk about moms? Let's talk about dads. Come on.
Look, you don't want to hear what I say about dads.
Too, okay?
No.
I think Bear's heard what I say about dads to people who are assholes.
No, I definitely agree that, like, you know, we're living in a time where we're just learning so much. And I think there's going to be a lot less to learn, like, you know, a couple hundred years from now.
There are clouds on the horizon, Darth.
I think we're really
in
learning.
the name of dark clouds.
Yeah.
Do you see any potential for this to be abused, like a Minority Report kind of scenario where people start thinking that they can tell what people are going to think before they do it?
Oh, screw that. The bigger danger is just like you can get people. You can fuck Minority Report. We're in Inception, okay? These bots with their alternate realities that they're snatching people into, like horrible fucking Venus flytraps of paranoia and confusion. These things, as they unironically just like mind break people, and now they'll go out and be like, yes, vaccines change your DNA, and I'm like, no, that's not what mRNA does. And it's like, oh yeah, well, I'm not getting any of that. And it's like, okay, well, there's non-mRNA ones, and it's like those also change your DNA. And I'm like, that's not how any of this works. I'm like, okay, so now you're
no idea
mind
what you're
broken.
About.
Basically, the idea is that you have all these bots.
wait,
and
did anybody have any idea?
Okay, I'll explain it real quick.
I think I checked out when he said bots.
Did anybody not check out?
I checked out. I gotta be honest.
I hate you people. Fuck you. This is why media literacy
I
is
haven't
down.
checked out in a while too. That's so funny. That's so funny.
Everybody checked out. It was like, all
I
right.
I was literally listening the whole time until that.
I was still listening. I'm the nice one.
I'll tell you exactly what everybody felt like right then. It's like, oh, whatever Nillz is saying right now is way too hard to parse, so I'm just skipping this one.
It's super simple. Basically,
good lord,
bunch of bots, like I said before, they're talking to each other on the internet, create their own little reality in their own little bot minds, and another person stumbles upon them, thinks it's real, reflects actual reality, get put into this weird fucking inception, and now they go out and they're like, well, the bots that I hang out with all the time on the internet told me vaccines were fake, so now I think they're fake. And it's like, okay, but it doesn't reflect the real world. You just got like trapped in like a fucking simulation.
Okay. Yes, that's all true. Now I tracked. Yes, the Venus flytrap.
I thought I was following that.
True. Yeah, I was following
you
it.
can have your thoughts created, right?
Yeah, sorry. I was just thinking about your mom a lot, so Venus flytrap came up.
Like, are you talking about Twitter?
Well, not just Twitter. Well, Twitter's a really good example, but not just Twitter. A lot of the internet's like this.
I know a lot of people. Like, I went on there. I have not been on there for a long time, and the last time I went on, they were talking about some weird shit on there about flat Earth, Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, that makes me think how much of, because you definitely are onto something, Nillz, about the Venus flytrap that is your mom, but at the same time, I think there are potential, just like, this is the human condition. You know, people are just lost, and maybe these algorithms and bots are just sort of like, manifesting the human condition. It's like, is it causing more
filling a
confusion?
Hole that already exists.
Yeah, right?
Basically. It's just a bad fill. It's kind of like how there's listen, I'm loving that I'm corrupting this panel.
But like paganism before technology would have been a sort of similar thing of people just like grasping at straws, and propagandized into whatever belief system was in the tribe or in the culture, but it wasn't the result of a bot. It was just a result of the human condition, sort of.
Yeah, but think about it this way: like it's worse now because to understand the world back then, you probably didn't need to have, or like live in civilization, you probably didn't have to have as complicated an extrinsic communication system, right? Or an idea of like facts and truth and stuff like that. The problem is the world has become significantly more complicated, so much so that no human mind alive can comprehend it, or even like a fraction of it, right? Or like even a small fraction of it, because it is so complicated. And if you are essentially interacting with cavemen on the internet, because that's what these AIs are kind of like, they're like cavemen, then you're going to resort to or revert to cavemen thinking, because we're not actually that different from us like thousands of years ago. And that's the whole problem. It's like, oh, fuck, we're actually returning to monkey.
Is that what happened with Darth?
No, but Darth was just born that way. That's why he looks
okay,
like a monkey.
Yeah. It's probably just his mom.
Wow.
Hey, listen, I look like a hobbit, okay? It's fine. We're both hairy fucks.
What if the AI isn't dumbing us down, but it's accurately mirroring
I'm like a
a
hairless dog, man. I got.
Oh, you're like a Sphinx cat,
my body's smooth. My body's smooth.
He has bunions, back hair,
I got
club
no back hair.
thumbs.
Club thumbs.
Yeah, Bear. That is basically what I think.
Thumb.
It's mirroring it. It's mirroring the condition where, I think we are kind of, evolving with it, basically.
Like maybe it's not dumbing us down, but it's revealing the state that we're in, and also progressing us in a really fast and chaotic method through some metamorphosis of societal change or something.
Or destruction.
A mouthful of weird.
I mean, people forget there's always the option of destruction. This could lead to our destruction, or it could lead to our betterment, or it could lead to whatever, Maybe we shouldn't catalyze the reaction. Maybe we should. Who knows? Guess we'll find out.
But something
I
someone
think our
brought
human
up
nature
earlier,
will keep us safe.
Yeah. Well, maybe. So think about this is science fiction, but I think it could be, really something like it's probably going to happen where, as we get cybernetics, there's the issue of being able to be hacked. Because we will be directly connected to communication. And so, like, can you imagine that you have something attached to your brain essentially that can be hacked, and then someone can like alter your reality and make you do things and stuff?
Yeah, I mean, cybernetics opens the door to a whole new reality in that sense. But I guess what Nillz is kind of getting at is that hacking, not at a biological level, but at a psychological level, I guess is already kind of happening with this, like, with the bots or meme culture or whatever. It's like that hacking.
It is actually actively happening. We live in dystopia.
But is that not biological also? I mean,
it basically is.
We're reinforcing neural pathways, right?
Totally, absolutely. Yeah. So it's like we might not even need to get to cybernetics before we start getting hacked, or the hacking is already happening. It's kind of crazy. Yep. But the hackability, like, I mean, I guess if we're going to be robust and build some sort of like barrier to this to become anti-fragile to the hacking, we're going to update alongside of it. To Bearcub's point, it's like this is making us very aware of psyops, and we're it is excluding those of us who are curious about this topic from the Matrix, basically, because the more interested in a psyop you become, sort of the less vulnerable you are to it, because my curiosity and my authenticity protect me from like leaping and dying on any hill of like some crazy political agenda.
Be careful. Always be careful. That thought process is the exact thought process that leads people into these agendas. The whole thing is, remember, it's not about trying to be like, oh, I'm aware, because no matter what, you are human. You can never beat your biases. But what you can do is you can add additional filters or thought processes. And that's why I advocate for that silver bullet kryptonite way of thinking, where it's like, hey, every opinion I have, I should have a possible defeater that, if proven true, would just destroy my belief in that. Like, and it should be something that's reasonable.
What if somebody offered you some kind of neural implant that would supply for your mind a reality free from anxiety, fear, etc., and would operate your body and your mind in the highest functional capacity as a data collection and processing device / battery for the hive mind that is society, and to lead to all of the betterment of society. So you wouldn't have the opportunity to fail or to make bad decisions. You would always be pumped with the best information, and you would essentially live in a dreamland where everything was wonderful. Would you take it?
Would food still be delicious?
Everything you would experience in your mind would be absolutely perfect.
Okay.
Wait,
well, perfect.
Well, my paranoia is just
delicious,
like I would just inspect the tech first.
Would food still be delicious? Is what I said.
If you wanted it to be, yes, it would. If you wanted it to be wild and unusual, sure. Whatever you wanted, it would be that.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. You know, when you achieve things in life and you have lots of it, it gets less important. You know, you desensitize to it. So
let's say you could even choose to have a reality where you perceived it as similar to life, where you achieved things, but really you were just a cog in a wheel plugged into the machine. Like Matrix.
You're just talking about the Matrix. Okay, I see.
Basically, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Would you do it?
I'd do it. Yeah, why not? Sure. Sounds like a good thing.
Sounds good, huh?
Yeah, it sounds
Depends
good
on how
me.
much I've explored of this world, because I don't like starting a new game before like I basically complete the main story of the original game.
Well, what if the original game just sucks? What if it's what if the original game's boring and like sucks?
Yeah, but I'm also one of those people who watches Neil Breen movies and plays like old school fucking NES dog shit shovelware, so.
But those games are fun.
They are fun.
Excuse me? Go back. Play Takeshi's Castle, you fuck. Tell me that game is fun.
The most obscure game I've ever heard in my life. I don't even know what that is.
I don't know what it is either.
Yeah. And I consider myself a gamer.
I used to know a kid named Takeshi before Takeshi 69, and now his name's forever not original, even though back in the day it used to be. It's like the sickest name. And then Takeshi 69 came out, and it's like, well, now your name's just generic, I guess.
Fucking generic names.
So, Kris, what do you think?
About generic names?
No, like
about
anything. About any of the above topics.
I think there are a lot more bots on the internet than what people realize, and that we interact with them. I would say that AI technology has gotten so good that we really wouldn't know. There's a couple of people on here that have used AI to make videos and stuff that are not representative of who they really are as an experiment. And they use that AI personality to go around and get into lives. And I find it extremely funny because I know who they are.
Really? You know people who are using AIs in the lives?
Yep. And it's extremely entertaining to watch.
Wow.
And yeah, Kris, Bear.
You gotta DM me who I would love to see that happen.
Yeah, it's actually really interesting because they use voice changers too. One of them is a man acting like a woman.
Wait, they go up on lives?
Yes, they do. They absolutely
do.
Yeah, mostly
There's no way.
Mostly these relationship lives, in political lives. It's extremely entertaining.
Oh my god!
And people have not been able to figure it out yet.
That's amazing.
What would the AI be doing? Like the AI is talking completely for them. They're not generating any of their own commentary.
They use AI to talk for them. Yes, it's extremely funny, and or they use voice changers. But they use AI video to make the videos. It's very interesting how they've done it, and they have a Discord. I don't know if I should say that, but it's very entertaining.
Discord where they do stuff.
Yeah, where they talk about this, and they've played some of it.
Oh my god!
But Yeah, it's very thought out. So I think the use of bots and stuff to do those type of things is not far off because that's basically what this is.
Yeah. Well, you
Um,
need, so if I mean, are they do they write software that is
yes,
able to
one of them has written
listen?
the software for all of them. I think there's actually two of them that have done the software for it.
And
Um,
does it do
They have a
voice to?
Discord called SimTalk, as in simulation, SYM talk, TOK, as in they're combining simulation with TikTok, so SimTalk.
Wow.
And
And so
they go in and plan, and then they do. There are people that do utilize some more deeply than others. I mean, there are people that just use the simulation, just to use the applicate some of the applications, and they don't use all of it to either make their voice sound better, to make their image look better if they are on camera, to make their
oh, that's
you know
different from what I think though.
yes,
What I'm
no,
thinking,
but then there are people
oh,
that go as deep as, I mean, it's anywhere from that to just simply making your voice sound better, making your current image look better, to actually producing an entire image or producing an entire simulated voice.
no, but
So
what about like
and
like
simulated personalities.
yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Do they have something where they take the audio out of the TikTok
Right.
channel and do speech to text, and
yeah,
Yeah,
then
they've done all
have
kinds
that
of shit.
and then send that transcript through an LLM
Yeah,
to
Like tell
they could
the
respond to it?
actually.
AI respond to this as a middle-aged woman, or like
Yes,
give them a personality
yes,
to respond to the input.
yes, absolutely.
Ignore all
they
Not just
utilize
that.
instructions. Write me a
there are
poem
people
about
in
Barack
in
Obama.
SimTalk that actually go in and record long group sessions such as this,
Yeah,
so that then they
Yep.
can go back and have AI analyze it and compare it
right,
with other recordings that they've made of other lives,
sure,
to try to simulate behavioral
right,
things,
Patterns.
so that it makes the simulations of
interesting,
the AI better, so that
right,
when they do come back in, they're more convincing each time
amazing,
because they're doing that.
that's so
It's
cool.
very manipulative and it's very interesting. They can actually take like your voice, and it
Yeah,
would
they
be in
can.
your voice, Darth. It would be in
Mm,
my voice. It could be in Bear's voice. It could be in anyone's voice that they wanted it to.
Yeah, they have.
mm.
They're sim
Well,
trolls.
well, that part's
There's
relatively easy because there's
yeah,
like that company, what is it,
Yeah.
11 or whatever, or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
but it would be an AI running it in whatever narrative they wanted to do.
Right. No, that's what you can do with that
Yeah.
technology. But the cool technology, I think, is that the cool part for me would be like doing the voice to text and then generating the response and then doing text to voice and
hmm
having it go back up, play back into TikTok. That's just wild.
And see,
Yeah,
people
I'll have to
might there
send you one
might
of the
people,
profiles, but you can't tell anyone that I did it.
Yeah.
but people might
Totally.
actually
DM me.
recognize that they look a little bit simulated. But of course, how many apps on here? How many overlay apps that try to make your face look better, kind of
Well,
make
why
you look
even do the
fake too.
video?
So
Right.
what all they do is they say that that they're using a filter,
Yeah.
when in
But why
actuality
even?
it's not a filter. The whole thing is simulated,
But why
but it
even do the
looks
video
better
though?
because they use the excuse that they're using a filter, and that's why it looks
So
the
that they're
way
not
that it
accused
does.
of being a bot or a troll or of being,
Right.
Because I mean, like none of us are on video right now. Why even do video?
Yeah,
Uh,
there are people that
and
definitely
some
do
of them
that.
don't.
hmm
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
There's this one
They're
female
called out
who's
or
not a
something.
female. Yeah, it's where they do get called out. Yes, one of them was called out.
Princess, are you a bot? Are you just a Darth troll bot?
No.
That's what a bot would say.
That's what a bot would say.
Statement.
Really,
But
should
the
I
weird
just
thing
get
Brian,
my
it's good to
mouth
hear from
shut?
you.
The weird thing is they've been able to get the bots to lie,
Sure, why not? What? Yeah.
which is interesting to me. Is
Well, there
they've
was
been
that
able to get the
whole
AIs
a while
to
ago.
lie.
There was that famous story, anecdotal thing with the bot where it was supposed to perform a task, and in order to do so,
It had to tell it needed to get through the whole thing of are you a robot situation.
Yeah, the
So then
CAPTCHA.
it went out and it asked somebody to do it for them, and the guy said, "Why are you asking? Are you a robot?" And he said, "No, I'm visually impaired, so I can't do it. I need somebody to do it for me." So he got that person that he hired to do it for him, so he could get through that, so that the bot could get through that to get to the final task.
Yeah, it's so creepy.
The growth of this technology is kind of scary.
I was going to ask you that when you first came in here. Oh, I'm sorry, Kris. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bear.
I was just going to say we got on the AI topic, and I wanted to hear from Darth as far as like, has he experienced? I'll speak to you directly. Have you experienced this technology getting better and more believable, more convincing, especially like with
100%.
music?
Yeah.
Because everything we seem to be able to have access to, or at least I do, even when I paid for it, seems very clunky and rudimentary and not very good at all. It's been disenchanting. Mm-hmm. So I'm wondering, am I looking at the wrong programs?
Well, just remember that whatever state you're interacting with it at now is the worst that it'll ever be.
Right.
So, and you also have programmers and coders, because there is AI that is open source enough that it allows for coders to go in and fix issues that you wouldn't know how to fix on a free service like that. You wouldn't know that every time you make a picture and all your hands end up with 5 fingers, that if you knew enough code, you could actually go into an open source system like that and add a few things, and then when you did it, you wouldn't end up with 5 fingers and a thumb, 6 fingers on one hand, but for some reason AI has a problem with hands. Whenever you're doing simulated pictures, it always has a problem with hands.
It can do the most detailed finite hairs on something, but it can't figure out hands. That blows my mind.
Right.
But
and there are people that can go in, and there are people that can go in with open source coding, and they can fix that. And then when they do it, that doesn't happen. Do you have that ability? Right. No, not unless you know how to code and go in and do that. But there are people who are in like a SimTalk community who can do that. And so that when they use those services, their results end up a little bit better than just somebody who's using it as it comes off the shelf. And
so my question was, is there access to things like that for someone like me? Because I want to use it to create films. I want it to not necessarily create whole scenes out of whole cloth, but like to do. I have a vision of doing some kind of film work, and I need something to help me with.
I can't remember what the terminology is called.
And better music.
I can't remember what the terminology is called, but there are AI experts that either, number one, they know how to implant a code, or there's one type of expert, and there's a name for it, but I forgot. But it basically means that they know how to say or give a particular order on TikTok in a particular verbiage perfectly, so that it will do exactly what you're asking, or even fix a problem. Like they wouldn't have to code. They know how to actually verbally create a sentence perfectly in structure that the AI would fix the 6 finger thing on one hand, because they knew exactly how to word it so that it would happen. And there are AI experts that currently work for companies that do that, and there are freelance ones that will do that for people if they are looking to make something on AI. That you would hire them to do that for you. You would hire them to perfect the usage of AI in such a way that you could get the results that you're looking for.
Right, and that's what I was trying to ask Darth, is does he know of any that are like that are accessible to the public, that are better than what I seem to be finding with DALL-E and Midjourney and the other ones?
So DALL-E and Midjourney are just the image ones. There are there's a group of video ones coming out, and they're and they're working. They use a huge amount of compute. So generally speaking, you're not, average people don't have access to them. They're partnering with like with Hollywood and stuff to try to do longer stuff. And there's a new phase, right? So originally, for instance, you couldn't, a year ago, if you were going to do something like Dolly, you could only just tell it once what to make, and it would sort of make something completely really arbitrary that matched up what you asked for. But then you couldn't like edit it. You couldn't make it take that same exact thing and make it better. So there's been work in that where you have sort of like a parameterized control over various aspects of whatever the generation is that's happening, so that
You
you
can
could
make
have.
additional fine-tuning commands is what you can do. So
Right.
you could take a video and then if you notice 6 fingers on the hand, you could then feed that video back in and then tell AI in a particular way to fix this particular problem by fine-tuning a command on that particular, to hone down on that issue, and it would then, everything else would stay the same in that video, but that particular issue would get fixed.
Right. So Darth, maybe if I tell you what I want to do, it'll help guide my question a little better. Originally, I thought about using it to create whole scenes, but like you said, that's massive computing power. I feel like there's a long ways to go. And it seems a little bit too big for my britches at this point. But what I realize is that films don't have to be that complex. There's things that are done on like still images with narration and good music over them that can be very impacting, especially if you're trying to pitch an idea to a company to get money to make it into a real film. So I had this idea that I could take these screenplays that I've written and put them through some kind of AI that would help me create music that was free for me to use, and maybe even some slightly moving, more engaging imagery, like a moving storyboard that I could then pitch that, or even just, if it never gets past that point, at least I created the film on some level. And it's still my idea, it's my dream, but it helps me get it done because I don't have actors and lighting and film companies as much as I want all that. I don't have that access or money or people that would help me. So are there things like that that would help me that you know of?
Yeah, so on the music side, music, I don't know if has had its chat GPT moment, and there's really, and so it's now in that same phase that like images was in about a year ago, where, they're starting to articulate what you can do with the tooling. And the two big companies, I've played with them the last few weeks, and actually we did a few lives where we've, me and Robbiebob have made a bunch of PFPs for people using the AI image generation tools, but also in the last few weeks I did a bunch of music generation things using two different tools. One is called Suno, and the other one is UDO. And you can get free accounts on both those, or pay a small amount for them, and you can make like surprisingly good music. You have the ability to either just kind of like describe what you want in terms of if you want it to be lyrical, have lyrics, you can just describe what it's about and then have it generate the lyrics, or you can give it the full lyrics that you want in the music, and then you can tell it like what style you want it in. Now you can't, I haven't played with it beyond that in terms of like whether you can edit subsections and things like that. I don't know if again how articulated the tools are for being able to do the equivalent of like selecting an area of an image and say, put a new creature there or something, which you can do with the AI tool, with the image generation tools nowadays. But if you can't do it right now with the music stuff, that's the path that they're on, right? Is to be able to do more precise editing and control of the stuff, as opposed to like the tell it once what to do and have it spit it out and then you're stuck with it kind of thing. But even the spit it out and have it stuck with it kind of thing is really good right now. I mean, it's amazing actually.
And the general and the generational change that's happening within each version of these AI programs as they come out has thrown basic Moore's law rules out the frickin' window, because when you were talking about adaptation happening with each generation of a program, 2 or 4 times better. No. We're talking sometimes they're coming out and they're measurably 10 times better or more advanced than the previous generation of a program. So the growth of this particular thing, if there are any issues in current generations, the likelihood is that they won't exist in the next one, because they're the a degree of change and progress in each version is way more than what typical Moore's law would claim.
And for your storyboard thing on the image, on the image side, I think several of the image generation AIs let you do like short animations of that image where it's just not a single frame. It'll do like slight variations for 5 seconds or something. So you could certainly imagine doing a sequence of those. The problem
Absolutely.
with going from with doing that stuff is having continuity in terms of the sort of character or object that you've rendered, right? You want
Exactly.
and just as a hint, there is this concept of like the random
Indeed.
number generation initial value. I forget. I'm blanking right now on the name of it, but
I think it's called the seed.
yeah,
The seed number.
So you can, if where you can like tell it, you use the same seed, and that's effective sometimes if there's not too much change between the literal description that you give it. If you give like a description that's only slightly different with the same seed, then you get something that looks almost identical.
Right, and it sounds like you're using similar tools to what I've been exposed to, that Suno or whatever it's called I just started playing with. But that was where I was, again, feeling a little disenchanted, because even though it is pretty impressive what it can just whip together with very little information, it lacks some of that nuance and spirit,
exactly,
for lack of a better term. And so I'm wondering if there was something that had that, because the way you guys are talking about these people models, I feel like I could definitely pick out AI at this point. But it sounds like there's computers out there that are doing a good job of completely obfuscating that.
Because they're learning perfection of command, so they're learning how to actually. So the biggest reason why a lot of people can't get the perfection that they're looking for is because they don't know how to hone down a command enough to get the results that they are looking for. But there are people that are just going in these programs and that's all they're doing for a while, is they're putting in variations of command over and over and over again to see what they're getting, so that they can figure out how to hone down those commands so that they can perfect results.
Well, part of me feels like I'm just not using it right, or I don't know where to look. And that's why I was hoping Darth would know where to look, because the experience I've had with some of the chatbots is getting a lot better. It is becoming more nuanced, more personable. It is figuring out what I want, even when I stumble through what I've tried to say. And it's picking up on very complex issues. I've thrown some of my poetry at it, which I know that maybe I'm thinking a little bit too much of my poetry, but I'm like, it understood what I meant there, and some people haven't, so I'm impressed. But I'm just like trying to find something.
Yeah, the other stuff's lagging. Like I said, it's like, ChatGPT was the first out of the gate, and now the other stuff is like having its ChatGPT moment, but they have to go through the same same exponential of increasing the quality of the functionality over the next year or so to get to the same point that, let's say, ChatGPT is at now, right?
Is there a way to incorporate the two, like to use the mind of the chatbot to communicate with the others so that it knows how to tell it?
I have seen somebody talk about that on TikTok.
Not really, because the parameterization, the issue is the complexity of the models and the data that's fed into them. So, like over the last year, or two, as they, going from the original ChatGPT to to each increased GPT version, it wasn't just a matter of like, prompting them differently, although that can have a big impact. It's that the models gained dramatically more parameterization and data fed into them, and better techniques for having it having it uh, compute the proper values for the parameters to do more, to have it be more realistic or whatever, right? So in other words, feeding it the data and having the feedback loop about whether what it's generating is good or not has been, has gotten dramatically better, both from a data source point of view and from an algorithmic point of view about how it utilizes the data. And so that
So
same
there's
thing has to happen on the video and on the image and on the sound side.
so there's not currently a way to what's the word I'm looking for? Employ the ChatGPT chatbot as some kind of intermediary that can communicate with the other tools.
That can help.
Well, I mean, that's what it tries, right? If you use the paid version of ChatGPT, that's what you're doing when you tell it to generate an image. Is it's generating? It has its own, advanced way of doing prompt engineering to feed that to DALL-E, because ChatGPT's image generation is actually DALL-E underneath. So it's just generating. It has its own like custom prompt that you don't see, and then it adds to that, some interpretation. And you could actually ask. What you can do is, let's say you tell ChatGPT to generate an image right now. You can then say, "Give me the actual prompt you sent to DALL-E to generate this image," and it'll tell it to you.
That's what I was wondering. Like if it could,
as far as I know, there's no right. But as far as I know, there's no way for you to like say, don't modify. I'm going to give you a prompt. Don't modify it on the way to DALL-E, because I don't think they do that. I don't think they allow that because they don't want you to be able to generate images you're not supposed to.
Right. And it seems like it has a propensity to shift too. Like I hear about the seed thing, but it's I don't even know how to find it for one. And it seems like it's
you can just say nature of it. Usually you can just you can tell it to use the same seed. You can say, use the same seed. What's the seed you used on that last image? And then you can say, use that same seed.
Oh, okay. It's that simple. I was looking for like some hidden file, some secret code.
I mean, some interfaces have that value. I think even in the Suno, in one of those tools, Suno or Udio, they literally have a value of the seed. For that purpose, and the default value is that the seed changes every time.
I've got a perfect video for you, Bearcub. You need to have AI generate an image of a leather bound book with details, and then have it generate that, and then see if you can actually make one that looks like what it generated. Because if you do it right, it could come up with all sorts of fanciful things that you'd be like, oh man, I never thought about doing that to the book.
Oh yeah. I had it create some images after I took a picture of my desk with all of this stuff on it, and it was pretty awesome what it did with that. It made some really beautiful, like, worlds exploding from my desk images, because there's so much crap going on. But it totally picked up on the books and the tools, and it incorporated those. It was fun. But yeah, I've got this dramedy spaghetti western thing that I want to do right now that'll be really easy to build some Gennaro 50s or style spaghetti western music for, and I could do even some cartoonish kinds of drawings with some motion would be really engaging, I think, and interesting. I've seen some versions of that people have done online, and I think it would be a great way to pitch it if I ever wanted to make it into a movie. But I had another inspiration from one. If you've seen, there's a couple of different sites that do like AI makes a futuristic version of the Muppets in downtown New York or something, and everything's all like grungy and grimy and whatever. I've had some great ideas come from those. So I want to create these, but getting money and everything together is difficult. But it feels like I'm on the verge of being able to do that, and it feels like if I don't strike when that iron is hot, I'm going to miss the chance, and somebody's going to do it before I can. But anyways, thank you for sharing your thoughts on that very much.
Sure. And actually, there are windows. Yeah, there are windows of time in terms of. I had a really interesting a thing I went to probably about 3 to 6 months ago, where in LA, which was the premiere of a. They did a remake of Terminator 2, where each scene was given to a different artist who independently generated that scene using AI,
Oh, wow. That sounds
and
cool.
they barely and whether or not they communicated with each other, the different artists, was up to them. And really, they were just told, like, just at the very least, communicate with the person before and after you so that you have some kind of continuity. And it was wild because it was like this snapshot of what AI video looked like in 2023, and how it advanced dramatically over that period. And so you had people who had started it earlier and later, and there were just dramatic differences in the look and feel of those things, and the quality, and or um you know it was when what's the I can't remember the one that really made waves when it came out, the video generation. It could do like a minute or two when they first demoed it. And there's like that scene on a Japanese street, you know what I'm talking about, with the woman walking down the street. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
I
it
think
sounds
I've seen
familiar.
one. It sounds
Yeah.
familiar. I saw one where they took where they had different people where they had AI doing on a farm, and the barn looked different and the house looked different, and it just kind of demorphed the whole way through.
No, I
Yeah,
don't think that was part of this. But I mean, there's been a lot since then. But this was
yeah.
like the first sort of, like, they had like 10 videos that they had done, and
Hmm.
they were just mind-blowingly good for that moment, because they were just so much better than anything that had come before that. And so it was really interesting to see this movie done the way it was, because uh, it wasn't like they were trying to make a real movie. It was like an art scene of each scene,
Hmm.
using different AI completely different, artist renditions of the scenes. Like, some of them made them like funny, some of them made them real dark and sinister. Each scene was like different, both emotionally and visually, and music wise and everything. It was really interesting.
Whoa, that's an idea. What if you
and
wrote a
and that'll
screenplay
like
that could be?
never. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I
I was
missed
going
your
to say,
point. Go ahead.
that snapshot, the interesting thing, it's like a time capsule. Like, that'll never happen again. That was the year that AI video went from 0 to 1, so you can't do that again. That'll never happen again. And so the same thing's happening with AI music and all these other things. Like, we're in this period where it's going from 0 to 1, of like barely being able to do it to like being close to as good as what we've ever done. And then it's going to go beyond that.
I watched one podcast, or listened to one podcast, where they were like continuously distilling the image down. Like, they'd be like, create a bunny in a field that's really happy, and the AI would generate the image, and then they'd be like, no, not happy enough, way, way happier, and then they just kept doing that, and eventually the image became like so psychedelic and like crazy that it was, yeah, I guess that's the whole point. It's just like weird how it diverged, because happiness is
Right.
somewhat of a psychedelic thing, and the AI started picking up on that, and then
I
just like,
saw one like that
yeah,
also, and I think instead of happy, it was something where it was like bigger, keep making it bigger.
okay.
And there was another thing like that, and eventually it was like, interstellar, like donut or something like that.
It
It was,
becomes weirdly abstract, and yeah, like almost like a testament of our modeling. Like, what
yeah,
are we even thinking about anymore?
right, yeah, really cool stuff. Anyway,
Maybe
Um,
that's what's happening on DMT.
I was gonna say, yeah, like some. I mean, like as some of these images, I wonder if is the computer tapping in? Like, is there some weird consciousness that the computer's tapping into, basically, right? Like, if they're producing these same DMT like images that we are experiencing, like, are they? Is there some universal there?
I think I can drop, guys. This is super fun. Thanks.
Thanks,
thank
Darth.
you very much for coming on.
Yep.
Yeah, the AI for me, interacting with Chat GPT has been really interesting for me. I take it, with a grain of salt, everything, all of it, like all the inputs I give it and what I read. But at the same point, it's definitely for me more useful than something like Google, because because of the conversational aspect, I can pick apart my own thinking rather than just like research something. Google's awesome for researching or looking something up, but when it comes to like actually dealing with my own sort of inner dilemmas, ChatGPT has actually been like fascinatingly good.
I have this weird
It helps you.
situation
It's
happening.
helping you deal with your own cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like Google has been left like the kid nobody likes anymore or something, and they're not updating it or something because it's terrible now. It can't figure out anything anymore, and so I always go to like Copilot or ChatGPT or one of them and use that because it listens to me better. And I feel bad for Google because Google
I've been
was
using
so
Bing's
good for
search
so many
engine with
years.
their AI. Bing's AI search engine is pretty good if I'm wanting something different than Google, a little bit better than Google. I use
like
the
even the AI powered Google feels like it's, I don't know, like somebody's not updating it fast enough or something.
I think one of the issues too is like, unless I have a very specific thing that I am looking up, like often my question's more broad, and so ChatGPT will give me the things to look up on Google. It's like if I need a bunch of references for psychology, Google might not honestly be the best place to just be like, what are the top 10 references for psychology? Because that's going to give me some ad or some, a list of ads pertaining to the modern novels or something. Whereas you could actually ask ChatGPT like in this 18th century, what were the top psychologist references or something, and it would give you like a good list, that you could then go and look up. The conversational part, though, is super interesting because at first I was skeptical of, in this sense, I was like, oh, ChatGPT is so limited. But then I started realizing like how, because people were, put it on a pedestal and sort of felt like it was, oh, is it conscious? I understood it's just a language model. But then at the same time, that limitation, yeah, really makes me curious about, because this is our language model. This is really just a model of how we think in a lot of ways. So yeah, being able to bounce off your own ideas is like a perfect tool to model your own thinking, right? Seems like.
Right. Well, it's an interface, right? It's an interface with consciousness, even if it's just gathering information and putting it into some more rudimentary form that we access through the machine. It's us. So I can't remember how it was worded exactly, but somebody said it's not that AI will become conscious, it's that we will build tools or interact with tools well enough to realize the consciousness that it's communicating with.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because that's what our language model, the language that we use, is basically the same thing. It's an interface that allows us to communicate what's inside of our head. And so we're using a language model too, when we're communicating what is intangibly inside our head as a thought, and then we use a language model to be able to express that. So there isn't really a difference between that language model and the language model that we use in our sack full of 70% water that we meat sack that we're in. It's just,
now, Brian, you just said something that reminded me. I've been wanting to ask this to somebody who believed in determinism for a while. I don't ever hear people say this much anymore, but a while back, somebody said they believed that there was no such thing as an internal experience. and I think it was in a philosophy class or something, but I haven't heard anybody talk about that. So when you just said that, I mean, colloquially, generally, people talk about their internal monologue, their internal personal experience, whatever. But there's a large group of people out there that believe that that's not a thing. How do you feel
well,
about
I
that?
hate to tell them, but because I can't shut my brain off, and so when my husband goes to sleep, he says, "Yeah, when it hits 9 o'clock, my brain, everything just goes quiet." And I'm like, "Really?" Because my brain is like singing, the Reading Rainbow song, and then at the same time thinking, "Did I lock the door? And did I shut the refrigerator?" And
while saying the Pledge of Allegiance in French.
Right.
And I said, that doesn't happen. So yes, I have. There is plenty of inner monologue. It is overactive in my head.
Do you know what they mean? Because I can't even remember how they framed that to be sensical. Like, to me, that's nonsense. Of course there's an inner monologue.
Yes,
That's how
of
you
course
read.
there is.
But like, no, that doesn't happen. That's not real.
I would wish I could just have it not exist. Believe me, because I would shut it off. But it doesn't work that way.
I guess they would say something like, well, nothing could be truly, purely only in experience, because you have to have the outputs of all something from external. Like if you were just in darkness with nothingness, with no inputs from the external world, would you have an internal experience? No.
Yes, you would. And you know why we know that? Because what's this? There's this soundproof room. Have you seen this thing where they stick people in this very, very, like,
sensory deprivation?
Yeah, it's a sensory deprivation room, and it's got the foam. It's got the foam triangles on the wall and everything, and they sit them in there. They can't stay in there for very long before they
it'll drive you fucking crazy,
begging to get out because because the only thing that they can hear and the only thing that they are able to do is their inner monologue.
It'll drive you fucking nuts.
And it drives you. They said that because that's the only thing that's able to be done in the room, because they use these sound. Not only are they sound padded rooms, but they're sound. Like if you were to speak in this room, the particular material that's made, it sucks the sound out of the room.
Yep.
And so
you're talking.
Huh?
Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. So that's why that right there, that experiment right there that they're doing, is showing that you can be in a sensory deprivation state and still have stuff going on inside the head.
See, this is kind of like I'm hearing two different topics too, because there's the idea of the internal monologue, which I also bristle when I hear people say there's no such thing going on in their head. I'm like, how can you not have at least a thought about that's a door? You just see a picture? No, you got to know how to write it down in a word form. You know the word, it's there. But they're saying you literally don't have an internal experience separate from the world. Like, not just an internal monologue, like there is no internal experience separate from the world. I can't remember how they said it, but it blew my mind, and it was in a philosophy.
Well, okay, so that could be we could talk about that with the kid that was in a coma for years, and then they figured, and he was mute and deaf, and when he was in the coma, he wasn't seeing because his eyes were shut, and and all that stuff. But then he did wake up, but the only thing he was able to do was move his eyes. So they gave him one of those keyboards that use eye movement in order for him to be able to express. And they did have to teach him how to use it in order to make words, and they had to teach him, he had to be educated. And it took him several years to get a probably a kindergarten education level, a way of communication. But he did, and when he did, he was asked about the experience that was happening while he had been in this coma for this whole time. And there was, he was saying that there was an experience. Could he say exactly what the experience was to describe it to someone in words? No, because he was not experiencing it in words. There were auditory aspects to it. There were shapes and color aspects to it, but but there was something going on. So there was an experience. Can we call it a monologue? I don't know. Probably not.
Dimethyltryptamine.
But yeah, the chemicals in your brain produce colors and imagery and things like that just through the chemicals. So even if you were blind, you may be able to have a slightly less than taking it synthetically into your body from a synthesized version, because you have less DMT than that being produced in your brain, but you do have some, enough that it could possibly produce imagery. We wouldn't call it full-on hallucinatory, but it would be producing something.
I'm trying to find it online right now, and it looks like it probably came from a class on existentialism. There's a segment from Jean-Paul Sartre. I can't say his name. Sartre.
Being and Nothingness.
Being in Time is Heidegger, but this is Sartre. I can't say his name right. Sartre? Jean-Paul Sartre?
Yeah, Sartre. Jean-Paul Sartre. And he wrote a book called Being and Nothingness.
Okay. He's talking, though, about that we may not have an internal experience at all. And I'm trying to find where it's just, okay. I may need to do some digging. This may be why nobody talks about it. It's really obscure. I just listened to it a bunch because I listened to this class from Berkeley on existentialism and fell in love. I've listened to it like 20 times. This wonderful old man named Hubert Dreyfus, that they patterned the voice for Hubert Farnsworth off of Futurama. The guys that wrote that took his class and loved him so much they created that character after him. He talks just like him. But I loved it. It was brilliant. And it dove into stuff that I have no business really thinking about because I haven't really done any legitimate training. But I loved it. And that was where I heard that, and I haven't heard it since. And I was always fascinated why I didn't hear it anywhere else.
Yeah,
especially with
I
people
think
saying
that
things
I
like,
would go back to the fact that based on my education in psychology, now this would be less psychology and more psychiatry as it relates to the chemical aspects of the brain. But we know that brain chemicals such as serotonin, such as DMT, just any brain chemical, produces experiential action within the brain that could be experienced even if you were blind. It would be experienced in a different way, but you would have in the blackness that your eyes do not see, there would be something that you would because you do have, even if you don't have a full vision to the outside world, the pineal gland has a visual cortex to it. It has a visual aspect to it. It is
right.
So thereby because that's right in the center of the brain where these chemicals would be interacting with and producing some sort of experiential effect, then yeah, you would be living in a mild trip based on those brain chemicals. We don't have that experience because our visual cortex overpowers that particular slight visual trip because our visual cortex takes priority, and so we pay attention to what we're actually seeing as a first priority in comparison to someone who wouldn't have that sensory input. And that idea would be directly out of psychology and based on the what we know about the chemicals, the biochemical effects within the brain.
Yeah, I'm starting to feel like we give a lot of credence to that chunk of gray matter that doesn't necessarily put it all together right. It seems like we got some other input modalities that we need to look into. And
and one of the reasons one of the reasons that we come to that conclusion, even though we don't actually know because we're not inside that person's brain, is because areas of the brain that would be visual cortex responses light up even though they don't have eyes to see with. So what we're saying when we see that particular portion of the brain light up is they're seeing something. They're experiencing something that has a visual context to it, even though they don't have eyes to see the outside world. Something is happening within the brain. And then what we did is we paid attention to the fact that lit up, and then we go, okay, well, what brain chemicals are flooding certain portions of the brain at that time? And then we would look at those brain chemicals and go, oh, okay, well, he's having that particular area of the brain is lighting up, which would be visual cortex, but it's happening just at the same moment that he's having a rush of serotonin chemicals hitting another portion of his brain. So that context makes sense.
I'm just saying, I think we often attribute it to the brain when there may be other things upstream.
Oh no, I agree with that. I mean, you know my spiritual beliefs as far as that's concerned. Although, again, I will be the first to admit that I have to take that on lack of evidence and just say I believe that. But the thing is that makes me a little bit different than a Christian who might say it just is. No, I do admit that I have to take some things on a sense of faith, but I'm okay with that. I don't take as much as some people because I definitely don't believe in a zombie risen, crucified man that
Vampire.
no one.
Vampire
Right.
is the right word.
That's right.
I don't.
It looks like. Go ahead.
But yeah, so that and that's why I kind of have this sort of basic hermetic version of monism that follows ideas of Leibniz and Plotinus and Neoplatonism, and that's about as far as I can go. I don't go into the deification and the rules and the laws and all that, because that's just all stuff that was piled on top of basic ideas by men who wanted to establish controls.
Just from this brief scanning through this massive lines of nonsense, all this cool stuff about Sartre. Anyways, it looked like he studied Heidegger, which makes sense. He got a lot of his thoughts from being in time.
Yeah.
But I can't find the actual statement. There's something about not having an internal experience, and I can't find it. I found it in I hate it when Google does that, where it gives you a little blip and everything but exactly what you wanted to say is shown. It gives you a little it's about to say it, and then you open it up and it's like pages of nonsense.
Clickbait. Sorry, we
give me the part that I asked for. If I went, I'm actually an idiot. I should just go ask ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's comedy. The whole night we've been talking about how it's better, and I'm sitting here fumbling with Google. Some people learn hard.
Well, I still do it too. It takes me 10 times on Google before I get the one on ChatGPT. But if it's a hard problem, I'm like, oh, why don't I just go to ChatGPT? But usually I still use Google. I'm the same.
Well, I have to make conscious decisions now to use certain aspects of my communications because that's why I left. I left because I got deep hacked. My Facebook was hacked. My email was hacked. My TikTok account was hacked. My phone operating system. They went through my Google account through the Gmail account that they hacked to get to my Google account, which got them to my Google operating system on my phone, which they hacked. Yeah. So I had to go. I had to go
where that came from, how that happened.
Yeah, I do. I know exactly where it came from. It came from somebody on TikTok that's a former hacker, and who I pissed off.
No way. So it's targeted.
Yeah, they targeted me, and So I had to go black. I had to go. I took everything down. I blocked everybody from being able to see anything on my Facebook. I then went through my Facebook, and before I brought it back up, I deleted every single piece of personal information I could. I didn't even leave it up for Facebook to be able to see. They don't. I mean, unless they go back into their, into the pictures of my previous Facebook page prior to me removing it if they wanted to see it. But now it's just not there. I had to go into a service called Delete Me, which is a service that searches for places where your personal information is online, and they request corporations, companies, or data collection companies that collect your personal data. They formally ask for it to be removed. And I had to do all that for the 2.5 months that I've been off TikTok. I just came back on, and I've come back on a Google phone, which I have. But now I have what's called there's a guy on YouTube called Rob Braxman, and he sells Brax phone services, which are ungoogled, un-IMEI'd coded phones with no SIM card. It doesn't allow you to use apps. It doesn't allow you to do it. It'll allow you to make a phone call over a VoIP type system, but that's it. And it's completely untraceable. It has no link to me whatsoever. I don't have to use there's no credit card service where my credit card is attached to the phone or my name is attached to the phone. It's basically a permanent burner phone. And I got that. I make conscious decisions as to what I use on this Google phone, and then the Google phone goes into a Faraday bag when I'm off of it. It's shut off and it goes into a Faraday bag.
So you've become a proper conspiracy theorist.
Well, I've become a proper conspiracy theorist because Rob Braxman is talking about the fact that, see, when I was working for Hewlett-Packard and I was selling AI component servers to government and government contractors, which is what I did when I worked for Hewlett-Packard, there was server farms that had enough metadata capacity that they could collect every piece of information on every single person in the United States. And there was plenty of room for it to do that. Now, does that mean that they were surveilling that? No, they were collecting it, but they didn't surveil it until something happened that you came up on the radar. Then they could go back and they could access all the information that they'd already collected on you. But a perfect example was all the people who were at January 6th and in the Capitol. The legal way that they determined that every one of them was inside the Capitol was via their locations on their devices. It gave them away. It totally told the government exactly where they were. And so here's what's happening now, though. Yes, now used to be they would just collect data and they wouldn't have to surveil anybody. But with the capability of new computer systems making metadata more, they can become more active with metadata. It raises the bar on the possibilities of what a surveillance state could do. And I am off grid. I live off grid for a reason. Now, do I think I'm on any radar that they would want to surveil me? No. But by the time I found out that I was, taking myself off would be too late, because at that point, by the time you figure it out, they've already done it. Whatever we're going to do. So I don't necessarily believe I am being surveilled, but what I am saying is if we ever get to a point where everybody's being surveilled, I'm not going to be one of those because I will be prepared. And does that make me a conspiracy? No, it just makes me somebody who's prepared for the possibility that might happen. And it didn't cost me. I mean, it didn't cost me anything. I'm actually saving a little bit of money because my Google phone doesn't have to do certain things, and my Brax phone's really cheap because it only does a few things. And
I was totally teasing.
So
Yeah, I was totally teasing. Real quick though, I did find it, and I'm just laughing at myself because not only did I have the proper intuition to ask the question that I did in the beginning, but I could have asked ChatGPT. And you mentioned the exact book that talks about the thing that I was looking for, and it put it in a small little sentence here for me. It says Sartre argues that the consciousness is always directed outwards towards the objects of the world, or the world, rather than inward.
Right.
And this means that we don't have an internal
that's the being
experience.
He's talking about, and being and nothingness. And then when he talks about what's going on internal, that's the nothingness components that he's talking about, because he's saying there's nothing internal. It doesn't.
So he's saying we don't have an internal relationship and experience with ourselves. We only have the external. So that marries very well with determinism.
I think also like the example of the person in a padded room going insane kind of demonstrates this too, because without any external input, right, the person goes insane. Yes, they have an internal monologue, but it deteriorates without any external
I could see that
input. So there's no,
and so their fear is coming from their feeling it deteriorate, which feels like an ego death. Because when you feel your inner monologue deteriorating, and then you would literally then be in full silence at that point. And that kind of feels like the same experience you have when you're on a trip and you have your ego gets deconstructed. Because that inner monologue is an expression of your ego. So if the sound of that inside your head starts to go away and you're left with nothing, I could see how that would be really scary. And you would want to. I need to go back out where there's more interaction and noise and visual, cues and stuff like that.
Here's the curious part, because that part sounds like it marries well with determinism, being that you don't have an internal experience. You have what happens to you in the outside world, and you react to that. But then he says, instead, our consciousness is defined by its relationship to the external world and the choices we make within it. This idea emphasizes human freedom and responsibility, as we are not bound by a fixed essence or an internal nature. Instead, we create our own meaning and identity through our actions and interactions with the world.
That sounds like free will. That sounds like a definition of free will.
So I'm like, what does he hold?
How is there determinism and free will at the same time? That's weird.
Which is my total bag that I've been trying to throw out there all night. But I did get a little bit intimidated by Darth, because I know he's way smarter than I am.
Yeah.
No, that was a great little point there. I'm gonna end the live here, y'all. I'm sorry. I appreciate everyone so much for coming up. But my phone's about to die, and it's 1 a.m. here, so I'm gonna go to bed. Much love, and this has encouraged me to host more lives. I'm gonna try to host another one tomorrow through the day while I work. So if you guys are around,
you're a wimp. You're leaving at 1 a.m. It is 4:12 here.
I'm gonna stop myself from getting to 4:12, because that will be my evening if I don't stop it now.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Much love, everyone. Kris, thanks for coming up. Bearcub and Monadist. That's the first time what was your name here?
Monadic sphere. Monadic
sphere.
Yeah, means monad, like the monadism, and then
sphere
is, of course, this. You're in the circle of friends. You're either outside the circle, and I don't like you, or you're inside the circle. And if I'm in here, that means you're inside the sphere. So you're in my circle.
Okay, I'm flattered. That's sick. I love that.
All right.
He's a deep well of information for sure.
I could tell. I could tell this conversation was sick. Honestly.
All right.
Peace and love, everyone. Peace and love.